Chapter 104. Go to watch net. Back at home, Su-chan noticed that although Li Yundong had been talking and laughing with her, there was always a hint of melancholy between his brows. Watch net. Rainbow ** literature _ learning % super # speed. Update. She couldn't help asking, Yundong, what's wrong with you? Li Yundong smiled and said, nothing. Su-chan shook her head. No. You've been frowning ever since you came back today. Did that person say something to you in private today? He didn't want to tell Su-chan, the innocent girl, about these troublesome things. He smiled and said, it's nothing. Don't think too much. She took his hand and said very seriously, Yundong, you are now my Taoist companion. You are the person I can entrust my life to, and also the person you can entrust your life to. I hope that you can tell me anything in the future, okay? Li Yundong felt warm in his heart. He stroked the little girl's cheek with his hand and said with a smile, I'm used to your heartless appearance. I'm not used to you suddenly being so considerate. Su-chan said angrily, I'm not usually heartless. He laughed for a while and told Su-chan about the conversation between him and Secretary Liu. After that, he sighed and said, as the saying goes, people don't fight with officials. Although my words were fierce, now that I think about it, my heart is still beating like a drum. Su-chan giggled and said, this matter? I thought it was something incredible. Li Yundong glared at her. Isn't it a big deal to offend the deputy governor? Su-chan smiled and said, now you can be said to be half a cultivator. When you succeed in the Juji phase, you will be a cultivator through and through. Do you know what a cultivator is? Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, do you mean people who practice cultivation? Su-chan said, you can say that but you can't say that. Li Yundong shook his head in confusion. Watch net. Su-chan explained, the so-called cultivators refer to those who cultivate hard on a specific path. Sun Simiao, the king of medicine, is also a cultivator, but what he cultivates is not the art of cultivation that can change the world. Instead, he cultivates the art of medicine that can save flesh and bones from death. Li Yundong couldn't help asking curiously, is Sun Simiao really an immortal? Su-chan nodded and said, in the Tang dynasty, he had already entered the Tao for medicine and achieved great success in cultivation. He could be called a great cultivator. When he became an immortal 100 years later, he became an immortal of the Nirvana realm. But through the dynasties, the common people worshipped him spontaneously, which made him become a deity even though he didn't want to. When Li Yundong heard this, he suddenly understood. You mean that if the people think you are God, then you are God? Su-chan said, as the saying goes, a man fights for his dignity, and a Buddha fights for his incense. What does this mean? Su-chan was about to explain, but Li Yundong's eyes lit up when he heard it. He couldn't help but say, I know. You said that a man fights for his dignity. It must be the qi of Jinqi that cultivators cultivate. Without this qi, people will be a little weaker, and with more qi, people will be a little stronger. Su-chan looked at Li Yundong with admiration and said with a smile, my master is so smart. You understand it? Then tell me, what does a Buddha fight for his incense mean? Li Yundong said with a smile, it means that a Buddha has to fight for the incense of the common people. Because of this incense, he can surpass other gods and Buddhas? Su-chan giggled and said, that's right, but it's not completely right. Gohong said in Biopuzi that people can cultivate to be immortals, but they can't cultivate to become gods. Only when a large number of secular mortals spontaneously worship and believe in you can you become a god. That's why Buddhas have to compete for a pillar of incense offerings from mortals. Only then can they obtain greater power and status. Li Yundong suddenly seemed to understand something, but he also felt that there was a layer of vaguely separating him. He could see it but he couldn't touch it. Yundong, do you want to become an immortal cultivator? Su-chan stopped smiling and looked at him. Li Yundong nodded. Of course. Why do you want to cultivate? Su-chan asked seriously. Li Yundong opened his mouth and was about to speak, but Su-chan stopped him with her hand. She said, don't rush to say it. Think carefully before you speak. Watch net. Rainbow ** literature _ learning % super # fast. Update. Li Yundong couldn't help but feel a little speechless. He remembered the ordinary days before he had met Su-chan, and the various changes in his life after he had obtained the Renyuan Jindan and gained great power. Especially when he thought of the scene where Lu Chuan, young master he and Secretary Liu had used money and power to threaten and entice him, he felt a burst of anger. He secretly clenched his fists, gritted his teeth and said resolutely, I want to become an immortal. Because I want to become stronger. Immortals have no seeds but mortals can cultivate. This was an inspirational sentence shouted by Gu Hong in the history of China, which was even more shocking than Qin Sheng and Wu Guang's. Among the immortals in China, which one had not become an immortal from an ordinary mortal? The Jade Emperor used to be a poor philanthropist, Zhang Byron. Goddess Mazu was a small fisherman in the village. Lu Dongbin used to be just a scholar. Zhao Gongming, the god of wealth, used to be just a villager in the mountains of the Qin dynasty. Since they could become immortals, why couldn't he? If he could become a god or an immortal, how could these clowns have the chance to ride on his neck? Li Yundong's chest was surging, and the qi all over his body sensed his will, surging like a torrent. Seeing Li Yundong's appearance, Su Chan nodded in her heart. She asked again, "There are thousands of Tao in this world. Where do you want to enter the Tao?" Li Yundong sat up straight and asked, "What are the Tao?" Su Chan smiled. She counted with her fingers and said, "If you do anything to the extreme, you can enter the Tao." Sun Simiao cultivated the Tao of medicine to the extreme, so he entered the Tao. Sun Lutong, the tiger-head Xiaobao, cultivated the Tao to the extreme, so he also entered the Tao. Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, "I would like to cultivate the strongest one." Su Chan's face suddenly became solemn, shocked and horrified. She said, "You want to cultivate the Xinxiao Taoism?" Li Yundong asked in confusion, "What is the Xinxiao Taoism?" Su Chan said, "In the upper-level Sutra of Limitless Spirit Treasures, it says that there are 9 heavens in the sky and Xinxiao is the highest. Xinxiao is called the supreme of 9 heavens, and it is the highest immortal realm where the gods in the world live. Therefore, the Xinxiao Taoism refers to the 9 heavens' divine skills." Li Yundong became more and more confused. What is the 9 heavens' divine skills? Su Chan didn't answer. Instead, she asked, "There is no Taoism in the world. The 5 elements of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth are the most common. In addition, they use the power of the way of heaven to call the wind and rain. The former is the 5 elements of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Even people who don't know Taoism can use them. But for people who don't cultivate, although they can't directly drive the power of wind and rain, they can also use the power of the wind and rain by observing the weather. But think about it. Is there anything in this world that can't be used or predicted by people who haven't cultivated before?" Su Chan asked. "But think about it." Li Yundong thought carefully for a while, but he couldn't figure it out. Su Chan was not in a hurry to tell him the answer. She just looked at him silently and let herself think. While Li Yundong was puzzled, his eyes unconsciously swept to the sky outside the balcony. He saw dark clouds piling up in the sky. It was obvious that tomorrow would be rainy. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly widened his eyes and blurted out, "Thunder, it's thunder." Su Chan clapped her hands and said loudly, "That's right. The only thing in this world that can't be used by people is thunder. Because thunder is the 9 heavens' divine skill, it is the power of heaven. Its divine power is so mighty that not only mortals are afraid of it, but also cultivators can't bear it. That's why there is the thunder punishment. The Xinxiao Taoism refers to the 5 thunders righteous method." Li Yundong thought excitedly, "Indeed. Now that technology has reached such a level, people can use wind power, water power, and solar power to generate electricity, but they have never used thunder to generate electricity. When thunder falls from the sky, people are afraid of being struck by thunder, so they add lightning rods to avoid the power of heaven. Why was this the case even though the modern world's technology had advanced to such a level? Because the power of thunder is the power of heaven, and the power of heaven is unpredictable. When people say that a person is full of evil and deserves to die, they don't say that he will be burned to death or drowned in fire. Instead, they say that God has opened his eyes and will strike him with thunder. From this, it can be seen that heavenly thunder represents the supreme power of heaven. It is indeed the strongest Taoism in the world." Su Chan widened her eyes and looked at Li Yundong seriously. The 5 thunders righteous method is the supreme Taoism in the world. It not only requires cultivators to be able to cultivate both Niden and external alchemy, but also requires people to be able to be one with heaven and man. Once you have formed Niden and have the assistance of external alchemy, you can sense heaven and earth with your human spirit. With a flip of your palm you can summon wind, clouds, thunder and rain. Under the 5 thunders, even a zenith heaven golden immortal will be destroyed. There is no one stronger than this Taoism. Li Yundong's eyes showed a look of excitement and fanaticism when he heard this, and his breathing involuntarily quickened. After Su Chan finished speaking, she said with a serious and vigilant face, "Although the Xinxiao Taoism is powerful, it is also extremely difficult to cultivate. Since ancient times, There have been many people who have cultivated the Xinxiao Taoism, but only a few have succeeded. The most important thing is that it is extremely dangerous to practice the thunder summoning technique. If you are not careful, the heavenly thunder will lose control and hurt the caster. Once you are struck by the heavenly thunder, your soul will be destroyed and you will be doomed eternally. Even the gods can't save you. Do you understand? Li Yundong couldn't help but look solemn. I understand. Su Chan asked repeatedly, do you really want to learn the strongest and most difficult Taoism in the world? Li Yundong said resolutely, of course. Su Chan asked again, it is very likely that you will be doomed eternally if you learn this Taoism. Aren't you afraid? Li Yundong stood up proudly, held his head high, and said, I'm afraid that as a 7-foot man, I don't know how to improve myself. What's so scary about this kind of thing? Su Chan asked again, do you really want to learn it? Li Yundong nodded heavily. Yes. Su Chan suddenly became very bashful. She said, I don't know. I'm going to faint. Li Yundong's body shook and he almost fell. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 105. Go to Watch Network. Li Yundong stared at Su Chan, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. If you don't know how to do it, then why did you try to trick me? Is it fun? Su Chan pouted. Are you an idiot? How could I possibly know such a difficult Taoist magic? Li Yundong was so angry that he burst out laughing. He grabbed Su Chan's arm and began to chuckle. Girl, how dare you trick me? You must be tired of living. Su Chan giggled and wiggled her body in Li Yundong's arms. No way. I don't know how to do it, but I know who does. Li Yundong loosened his grip. If you try to trick me again, I'll pull off your pants and spank you. Su Chan pressed Li Yundong's hand down with one hand and pressed her skirt with the other. She giggled. No. I'll tell my master and ask her to hit you with the 5 Thunders Righteous Magic. Li Yundong was stunned. Your master knows the 5 Thunders Righteous Magic? Su Chan smiled proudly. Yeah, she's amazing. She's known as our fox, as a genius that only appears once in 100 years. There's almost no Taoist magic in the world that she doesn't know. Li Yundong was so shocked that he didn't notice that Su Chan had almost let slip a few words. Is your master that powerful? Do you want her to teach me? Su Chan held Li Yundong's arm and squeezed him with her voluptuous body. Yes, she said with a smile. From now on you're my shitty. I'm your shitty. Li Yundong's face darkened. He pretended to be angry and said, No. Our seniority has dropped by 2 levels. Absolutely not. I should be your shitty and you should be my little shitty. Su Chan giggled. That's not true. I joined the sect much earlier than you. You're my little shitty. Li Yundong watched as the girl breathed in front of him smelled like orchids. At a glance, her snow-white breasts pressed against his arms. The 2 pink lumps were squeezed out of shape, and the deep milky white ravine made Li Yundong feel hot all over for a moment. Go to see. He smiled mischievously and put his arm around the little lass's waist. His mouth moved to her rosy and plump lips and kissed them hard. Then he bit the little lass's lips and giggled, Who's your little junior brother? I'm not small at all. Watch net. 7KOM. As he spoke, he pushed his hot and hard thing against the little girl. Su Chan felt the heat and hardness of Li Yundong's thing, and her body softened. Her eyes were full of charm. At first she was a little frightened and dodged the incomparably hard thing, but soon she softly stuck to it. The little girl raised her head and said, Sir, you can't do it now. Wait until you reach the Zhuji phase, okay? Li Yundong suppressed his desire and pretended to be displeased. Why do we have to wait for the Zhuji phase? Su Chan's voice was so sweet and soft that it could melt a man of iron into water. Only by successfully building your foundation can the Sanhua spiritual qi in your body be stable, and it won't be easily taken away. What if? Su Chan suddenly said shyly, if you have sex with me now, you will be drained to death because your Qian qi is not strong enough. Li Yundong dragged out his voice and said, Oh, I see. So you're a little girl who eats people up without spitting out the bones. Oh, I see. Li Yundong's words were unintentional, but the little fox was listening attentively. Su Chan's face paled and she lowered her head. Her heart was pounding. Did he find out who I am? Li Yundong saw that Su Chan had buried her head in his chest. He thought that she was shy. How could he know what she was thinking? Li Yundong saw that although the little girl had buried her beautiful face in his arms, her waist was slender and her buttocks were plump, and her figure was graceful. He couldn't help but laugh and say, the body of a 28-year-old woman is soft, and the sword at the waist can cut a fool. You don't see the head, but you secretly make your bones dry. As a student of the Chinese language department, Li Yundong often skipped classes, but he still remembered the warning poem from Jin Ping Mei. It was appropriate to recite it at this time. After he finished reciting it, he chuckled at Su Chan and lifted her chin with his finger. Su Chan looked at Li Yundong with a pair of pitiful eyes. She looked so uneasy that even a Taoist sage would have a mental breakdown, and a gentleman like Lu Xiaohui would have gone crazy. Go to the internet. 7 KOM. Li Yundong couldn't help but sigh. Girl, you're so beautiful. Even if I die and my bones dry up for you, I'm willing. Su Chan jumped out of Li Yundong's arms and shook her hands. No. I can't do that. I can't hurt you. If I do that, even if you have Jindan Qi, you'll still die because your blood essence will be exhausted. She said in a panic, but she saw that Li Yundong was staring at her quietly. Su Chan was shocked. She slowly walked over to Li Yundong and gently knelt down. She took Li Yundong's arm with both hands and begged softly, Yundong, listen to me and succeed in the Zhuji phase first, okay? As she said this, Su Chan suddenly looked shy. When you succeed in the Zhuji phase, you can do whatever you want, okay? Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. His face relaxed and he couldn't help laughing. He pinched Su Chan's cheek with his hand and said, Really? I can do whatever I want? Su Chan was so shy that her face turned red. She bit her lip and nodded with her eyes sparkling. Yes. Li Yundong waved his hand and said in a dignified manner, Okay, then I'll build the dam foundation. Before I reach the Zhuji phase, I won't touch a finger of yours. After that, he turned to look at Su Chan, put his palms together and said, Amitabha, why are you so close to me, benefactress? Don't you know that men and women should not touch each other? Su Chan pursed her lips and smiled, pointing to Li Yundong's tent. Then what is this? Li Yundong said with a serious face, Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Seeing Li Yundong's behavior, Su Chan knew that her advice had worked. She also relaxed and giggled. Then I'm leaving. Li Yundong pretended to be impatient and disgusted. Go, don't affect my cultivation. Su Chan rolled her eyes, giggled and turned to leave. Just as she took a few steps, she heard Li Yundong cough. Stop, come back. Su Chan held back her laughter and said with a serious face, What can I do for you? Li Yundong said with an apologetic smile, If you don't teach me how to build the Zhuji phase, then what kind of foundation should I build? Su Chan couldn't help laughing. She raised her head proudly and snorted. Call me master. Li Yundong pretended to be angry and said, You little girl, if you don't get spanked for 3 days, you'll tear the tiles off the roof. Do you want me to spank you? Tell me. Startled, Su Chan sat down obediently. She said. She tilted her head and thought for a while, then said, There are 9 heavens in the sky, so there are 9 heavens in cultivation. They are body shaping, qi refining, spirit concentration, foundation establishment, magical power, nascent soul, jinshin, thunder tribulation and flying immortal. With the help of the Rinyuan Jindan, you have cultivated to the middle level of spirit concentration. You only need to complete the spirit seal manifestation and freedom. With these last 3 lessons, you will have completed the highest realm of spirit concentration, and you can enter the 4th heaven of foundation building. Su Chan said, When you succeed in the foundation establishment, you will begin to have mana and can use magical power. At that time, you can ask my master to teach you the supreme Taoist method of the world, the 5 thunders execution. Li Yundong's eyes lit up when he heard this. He wanted to cultivate to the foundation establishment immediately and learn the 5 thunders execution. Su Chan saw his expression and understood his eagerness. She smiled and said, Rice needs to be eaten 1 bite at a time, meat needs to be chewed 1 bite at a time. Haste makes waste. First, you need to refine the essence qi in your body into spirit and complete the last subject of spirit concentration. After that, you can start the foundation establishment. Li Yundong asked, What do these spirit seal, manifestation and freedom mean? Is it difficult? Su Chan smiled and said, It's not difficult. With your talent and conditions, I believe it should be very easy. But Li Yundong heard her doubts at the end, so he asked, But what? Su Chan said, But when you practice these subjects, it is very likely that your divine sense will be pulled away from your body and enter the realm of nothingness. It will be difficult for you to get lost. Li Yundong was stunned. What does that mean? What if I get lost and can't get back? Su Chan said with a serious face, Although the body is still alive, the soul is not. It has no sense of smell, hearing, taste, touch, or perception. Li Yundong was shocked. Doesn't that mean I will become a vegetable? Su Chan said seriously, cultivation is difficult. It is as difficult as ascending to heaven. The way of heaven is to take away the surplus and make up for the deficiency. We are born to be constantly aging and no one can resist this process. But cultivation is going against the will of heaven. Naturally, you will encounter all kinds of horrible things in the process of cultivation. Although you have the help of Rinyuan Jindan, your cultivation can be said to be reaching heaven in one step. It is against the natural order of the natural order, so you will definitely encounter great horror that even I can't imagine. Su Chan asked, "Aren't you afraid?" Li Yundong laughed. "What is there to be afraid of? For the sake of the foundation establishment, I am not afraid of anything." Su Chan saw Li Yundong winking at her, looking anxious. She couldn't help but laugh and spit. "Bah, just now you vowed that you will only cultivate to become stronger. Now, in the blink of an eye, you have become a cultivator for the sake of sex. You are such a loser." Li Yundong said with a serious face, "Of course. Confucius said, food and sex are human nature." Su Chan laughed and scratched her cheek with her hand. "Don't be shy. That's what Gaozi said." Li Yundong laughed dryly. "Who cares who said it? Anyway, the sage told us that there are only two things in life: eat and pick up girls." Su Chan laughed and scolded him. "If the sage knew that you misunderstood him like this, he would probably die of anger." Li Yundong laughed and waved his hand. "You asked me why I want to cultivate to become stronger? I said I want to become stronger. Now, I want to add one more thing. Why do people want to cultivate to become immortals? The reason is very simple. They want to be sober, holding a killing sword, and drunk on the knees of beautiful women. Alright, I am going to meditate and cultivate. Little girl, protect me from the side." Su Chan replied coquettishly, "Okay, my lord. I hope you succeed in the foundation establishment phase soon. Then we can get married and travel the world." Hearing this, Li Yundong couldn't help but think of the beautiful days when he took Su Chan to travel the rivers and mountains of the motherland. For a moment he couldn't help but look forward to it. He glanced at Su Chan and their eyes met. They both smiled sweetly. The depression and unhappiness that had been caused by the secular world had long flown beyond the clouds. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 106. Go to WatchNet. Before Li Yundong entered meditation, Su Chan explained to him what seal spirit, manifestation, and great freedom were. WatchNet. 7ko-//in spirit and manifestation are the embodiment of a higher realm of visualization. According to the chapter of the Yellow Emperor's Canon of Internal Medicine, the spirit pivot, original spirit, it says, the birth of life is called the essence, and the fight between the two essences is called the spirit. Su Chan patiently explained the Tao and principles of cultivation. In addition, the Yellow Emperor's Canon of Internal Medicine also points out that the heart contains the spirit, the lungs contain the soul, the liver contains the soul, the spleen contains the will, and the kidney contains the will. Su Chan continued, "From this, we can see that there are spirits in the 5 viscera of the human body. When people cultivate, they constantly train the aura of their internal organs. Once they reach a certain level, the aura of their internal organs will continue to grow, and the gods will slowly begin to reveal their unique appearance. Cultivators believe that since everyone's internal organs have a god spirit, then this person also has a god spirit. This kind of god spirit does not refer to a person's soul, but the spirit of this person as a whole. Cultivators can visualize the appearance of their own gods when they are meditating. This is the seal spirit. But at the beginning, this kind of visualization must be very vague. Only through continuous cultivation can it slowly become a specific shape. This is the manifestation. After completing this level of visualization, people will have their own god spirit. Cultivators can judge the results of their cultivation based on the god spirit conjured by their own seal spirit, and then constantly adjust their cultivation direction." As Su Chan spoke, she licked her lips with her tongue. Li Yundong, who was listening attentively, quickly poured her a glass of water. Su Chan took a sip of water and continued, "For example, some people's liver qi is more vigorous, so the gods that appear tend to be green, because the liver qi is green." Li Yundong couldn't help but say, "If some people have a strong heart, the gods that appear tend to be red? Is it because the heart qi is red?" Su Chan nodded and praised, "Yes, exactly. Now that you understand this principle, you can begin to meditate. I'll protect you from the side." Li Yundong was eager to give it a try. He opened all the doors and windows in the room, except for the main door to keep the room ventilated. Li Yundong closed his eyes, and his breathing gradually became steady and long. His mind was empty, and the qi in the Rin meridian and the governing meridian in his body began to flow spontaneously to carry out the minor circulation. After the qi had passed through the Magpie Bridge and returned to the Huyin acupoint, it began to flow to the other 8 extraordinary meridians in his body, and began to carry out the great circulation. Watch net. After the small Zhoutian and the great Zhoutian had gone through 36 cycles, the qi of the 5 internal organs in his body began to boil. The qi of the 5 internal organs, which were green, white, red, black, and yellow, began to slowly gather on the top of his head. Su Chan, who was watching from the side, saw a colorful aura rising from the Baihui acupoint on Li Yundong's head. The aura swirled and gathered at the top of Li Yundong's head without dissipating. Su Chan knew that this was the manifestation of the 3 flowers at once prominence and the 5 qis collecting in mind. At this time, Li Yundong had already entered the deepest state of meditation. He felt as if he had returned to the vast world where he had visualized the lotus throne last time. But this time, the world around him was no longer a vast expanse of darkness. Instead, it was a sea of 5-colored rolling clouds. Li Yundong lowered his head to take a look. With a thought, he took the initiative to guide the qi of the 5 internal organs in his body to begin to condense. However, no matter how he visualized the qi of the 5 viscera, the qi of the 5 viscera just flowed on its own and did not change according to Li Yundong's visualization at all. Li Yundong couldn't help but be in a daze. He pondered over what Su Chan had said before, and suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. Su Chan said that there are gods in the 5 internal organs. Does this mean that they can imprint spirits on their own without my control? Thinking of this, Li Yundong couldn't help but frown. If I don't control them, how can the qi of the 5 internal organs flow and change into gods? Thinking of this, Li Yundong found that he seemed to have fallen into a dead end. The way out was faintly in front of him, but there seemed to be an invisible film in the middle. Could it be that I only need to try to speed up the flow of the qi of the 5 internal organs? Li Yundong looked at the rolling 5-colored qi under his feet and suddenly had an idea. He used his mind to try to control the 5-colored sea of clouds and let them flow rapidly. Sure enough, the sea of clouds slowly rolled and condensed, as if it was about to form something. Go to the internet. 7KOM. Literature. Li Yundong was overjoyed. He knew that he had found the right way. There were gods in the 5 internal organs, so this aura didn't need to be deliberately controlled. Sometimes it would backfire. Li Yundong only sped up the flow of the qi of the 5 internal organs in his body, but it urged the process of the imprint spirit materialization of the 5 internal organs. After the 5-colored qi gradually condensed into a ball, it slowly revealed the appearance of a person. However, its facial features were blurred, and even its hands and feet were not clear. This is the imprint spirit? Li Yundong was pleasantly surprised. He continued to control the flow of the 5-colored qi, trying to make the human figure a little clearer. Li Yundong didn't know that it was already amazing for ordinary cultivators to have a shape when they first carried out the imprint spirit. However, after the transformation of Renyuan Jindan, not only was the aura in his body huge, but the qi of the 5 internal organs was also extremely strong. Therefore, after the imprint spirit, he quickly broke through to the materialization level. As Li Yundong visualized, the flowing 5-colored qi gradually condensed and mixed together, turning into a colorless qi. The blurry human figure also slowly froze at this time. Li Yundong was surprised to find that in front of him, the qi slowly turned into a tall and sturdy human figure. This person had 3 heads and 6 arms. One head had angry eyes, and there was a vertical pupil flowing with 5-colored divine light in the center of his forehead. It was radiant and oppressive. One head was cold and arrogant, and its eyes were slightly closed. Its expression was arrogant and insufferably arrogant. The other head was full of smiles, charmingly naive and approachable, making people feel close to it at first glance. Li Yundong carefully looked at the expressions of the 3 heads and found that the 3 heads of this person were vaguely similar to his own. Is this the god in my body? Li Yundong was shocked, and his eyes fell on the 6 arms of the god. He saw that the 6 arms were holding different weapons in different postures. One of the arms that corresponded to the head with vertical pupils was holding a black iron fan. There was a bloody red light around the iron fan, and outside the red light, there were many golden Buddhist runes constantly rotating around the treasured fan. It looked solemn and murderous at the same time. The other arm was holding a 3-foot-long Qingfeng sword. The long sword was engraved with mysterious patterns. There was a faint purple light around the sword, like a purple silk fluttering in the wind. One of the 2 arms corresponding to the head with a cold expression was holding a 3-legged cauldron. This cauldron was about the size of 2 human heads. It was dark all over and was engraved with ancient characters and images. The center of the cauldron was surrounded by mist, and there was a faint colorful glow. The other arm was holding an 8 trigrams mirror. In the mirror, a person could be seen faintly, constantly repeating the reincarnation process of life, old age, illness, and death. Finally, the 2 arms corresponding to the head with a smile were holding a brush as thick as a thumb and a blue-gray glass bowl. This 3-headed, 6-armed god, who was holding all kinds of items, surprised Li Yunyang a little. But before he could react, he suddenly saw the 3-headed, 6-armed god pounce on him and jump into his body in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Li Yundong suddenly felt an inexplicable power. It was as if he had the blue sky above his head and the earth under his feet. He was the only ruler of the world, the only god. He seemed to be this 3-headed, 6-armed god, with vast and boundless magical power. Li Yundong was shocked and felt this power in disbelief. He tried to step on the clouds under his feet. Suddenly there was a rumble and he felt that the whole world was shaking. Is this my power? Li Yundong was ecstatic and laughed wildly. He tried to control the 3-headed, 6-armed god to fly in the air. At first he was a little clumsy, but soon he could fly freely in this spirit space. This was a kind of unrestrained, invincible and fearless feeling of freedom. It was also the last homework and the last checkpoint of the spirit concentration realm. When cultivators reached this level, their divine senses were already very strong, and they could visualize an unprecedentedly powerful self-god. But in fact, this kind of self-god only represented the realm that this person might be able to cultivate to in the future, and it did not mean that this cultivator already had this realm. But at this time, because it was the first time that the cultivator had come into contact with this kind of power and realm, it was easy for him to regard the god in his spirit space as himself, and thus enter a state of great freedom. Therefore, cultivators also called the god visualized at this time, Freedom Sky Devil. When people were born into the world, they were imprisoned in their mother's womb. They were fed by the umbilical cord and had no freedom at all. It was the same for people after they were born. They were often controlled by their parents, society, and heaven and earth. And the fundamental purpose of cultivation was to pursue freedom, to pursue the realm of freedom. Whether it was to seek longevity, it was also to pursue the freedom of the body, to no longer be restrained and restricted by the body. Seeking divine power was to pursue the freedom of life, to no longer be oppressed and controlled by all kinds of powerful forces. When cultivators entered their own spirit space to visualize, it was often an illusory world of absolute freedom, because this world was their own visualization. Naturally, they were the only Lord God in this world, with infinite strength and invincible power. A person who had never experienced this kind of great freedom realm suddenly experienced this kind of realm would definitely have an extremely terrible heart devil. The stronger the person was, the more it would be. This was one of the reasons why cultivators emphasized that they should be pure and have few desires during cultivation. Although Li Yundong was not pure and had few desires, compared with most people in society, he still maintained a rare and precious pure heart. Therefore, although he felt the state of mind of the great Freedom Sky Devil and laughed wildly in his spirit space, he always maintained a trace of sobriety in his mind. Especially when his laughter shook the sky, Li Yundong suddenly heard someone calling his name faintly. This cry was like a breeze under the scorching sun, or a clear spring in the wild desert. Li Yundong's mind suddenly quivered, and his wild laughter gradually stopped. Slowly, the whole spirit space became dark and turbid again, and the gods with 3 heads and 6 arms he had visualized before also gradually disappeared. After a while, Li Yundong woke up from meditation. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Su Chan looking at him nervously. Seeing that Li Yundong had woken up, she immediately breathed a sigh of relief, patted her chest and said, "That was close. You almost got lost in your own spirit space and became a great Freedom Sky Devil with a lost soul." Happy reading. OM/. But now, Su Chan suddenly felt that she had no confidence at all. Not only was Li Yundong's cultivation advancing at a rapid pace, but the cultivation talent he had displayed made Su Chan suddenly feel a little timid. The last time he visualized the lotus throne, he visualized the terrifying 9-linked treasured lanterns. And this time he visualized the immovable wisdom king. Su Chan was tongue-tied. What kind of monster is this boy I met, she thought. Seeing that Su Chan was staring at him in a daze, Li Yundong smiled and waved his hand in front of the girl's face. "Hey, what are you looking at?" he asked. Only then did Su Chan come to her senses. She looked at him with a strange expression and stammered, No, nothing. Li Yundong smiled and said, can I start the Zhuji phase now? Su Chan suddenly burst into laughter. She giggled and said, you're really a shameless pervert. Do you only know how to hurry up to the Zhuji phase to play dirty tricks? Li Yundong's face turned serious and he pretended to be angry. Hey, you little devil, how dare you doubt my purpose of cultivation? As soon as Su Chan heard the word little fairy, her smile froze and her expression became a little unnatural. She forced a smile and said, you can't build the Zhuji phase yet. Watch net. Li Yundong didn't notice the flash of uneasiness in Su Chan's eyes. Why can't I build the Zhuji phase yet? He asked in confusion. Su Chan pointed out the window. Look, it's almost dawn. Don't you have school today? Li Yundong looked out the window and was shocked. It's already been one night? No way. You've been watching over me all night? Are you sleepy? It would have been better if Li Yundong hadn't mentioned it. The moment he did, the little girl yawned loudly. I'm so sleepy. I want to sleep. Li Yundong scooped her up and tapped her nose affectionately. You sleep at home tonight, he said. I'll go to school on my own. Su Chan immediately grabbed Li Yundong's sleeve. No. You can't leave me here. You promised me. Li Yundong smiled. Okay. Go to sleep first. I'll wake you up later. Watch net. Rainbow carrot asterisk literature underscore learning % super hashtag fast. Update. Su Chan refused to let go of Li Yundong's arm. Stay with me. You can't leave until I fall asleep. Li Yundong put Su Chan on the bed and touched her nose. Okay. I'll watch you fall asleep before I go. The little girl beamed with joy. She held his arm and closed her eyes. Li Yundong waited for Su Chan to fall asleep. After a while she didn't move, so he tried to pull his hand away. To his surprise, she opened her eyes and stared at him anxiously. She pouted and said, I'm not asleep yet. Like a thief who had been caught, Li Yundong raised his hands and said, well, you've caught me. I won't leave. I'll stay here with you all the time, okay? Su Chan nodded happily and stuck out her pinky. Pinky promise, she said. Li Yundong smiled and hooked his pinky with hers. Pinky promise for 100 years. Don't change. Su Chan was relieved. She closed her eyes and curled up into a ball. After a while, she fell asleep. Li Yundong looked at Su Chan's exquisite and beautiful face. For a moment, his heart was filled with warmth. It was as if something had filled his heart. He was satisfied and happy. After sleeping for about 2 hours, Li Yundong patted Su Chan's arm. Hey, it's time to get up. I have to go to school. Su Chan rolled over in a daze. I'm so sleepy, she murmured. Then you can sleep at home. I'll go to school by myself, Li Yundong said softly. Su Chan immediately sat up. Her eyes were still a little sleepy, but she held Li Yundong's arm tightly. She couldn't open her eyes. No, she mumbled. You promised to take me with you? Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How are you supposed to go like this? Su Chan rubbed her eyes and said, carry me? Li Yundong sighed. He carried Su Chan to the bathroom, washed her face and rinsed her mouth. He was so tired that he almost broke out in a sweat. However, what made him feel very magical was that after he tossed and turned, the little girl was actually able to continue to be drowsy bit by bit. Li Yundong couldn't help but laugh. He hung his school bag around Su Chan's neck, then carried her out the door. Along the way, Li Yundong attracted a lot of attention, especially when they arrived at the school. Li Yundong, who was carrying Su Chan on his back, attracted a lot of girls to point at the boys beside them. Did you see that? Look at how boyfriends treat their girlfriends. When they reached the classroom, Li Yundong placed Su Chan on her seat. As soon as her butt touched the seat, she curled up into a ball and fell asleep. Li Yundong smiled and shook his head. He stroked Su Chan's hair and gazed lovingly at her face. He would never get tired of looking at her. Yo, what's with the lovey-dovey display of affection so early in the morning? What the hell did you do last night? A sour voice rang out beside Li Yundong. Li Yundong turned around and saw Feng Na and Ching Ching standing in front of him. Feng Na wore a half-smile on her face, while Ching Ching stood behind Li Yundong, waving at him with a smile. Have the two of you decided to renounce the darkness and join our class? Li Yundong asked with a smile. Are you two going to stay in our class? Feng Na snorted. Bah, chicks. I'm here to talk to you about something. Unconsciously, Feng Na spoke a little too loudly. The little fox groaned sleepily and turned over to express its protest. Li Yundong gestured at Feng Na to keep her voice down. Should keep your voice down? Feng Na shot Su Chan a jealous look inside. I need to talk to you about something, she said softly. Li Yundong's voice was even softer than Feng Na's, as if he was afraid of disturbing Su-chan. What do you want? Feng Na subconsciously lowered her voice when she heard Li Yundong's voice. I'm here to talk to you about your appointment as the president of the Taekwondo club. Li Yundong shook his head like a rattled drum. No, absolutely not. Feng Na's voice was soft, but her expression was one of confusion and anxiety. Why not? Zhao Yujin is gone, and you won the approval of the whole school at the exchange. Why can't you be the president of the Taekwondo club? Li Yundong raised a finger. First of all, I was the one who injured Zhao Yujin, he said. Zhao Yujin was hospitalized and he caused the massacre at the school. So, you can say that I'm indirectly related to the incident. If I take over after Zhao Yujin's death, what will people think of me? What will they say about me? Second of all, Li Yundong raised a second finger. I don't know Taekwondo and I've never learned any Taekwondo. I don't even have a belt. How can I be the president of the Taekwondo club? Feng Na didn't wait for him to finish. You can take the exam if you don't have a belt. Li Yundong raised a third finger disapprovingly. Third and most importantly, I don't love this Taekwondo club at all. I'm not interested in being the president at all. Then why did you sign up for the Taekwondo club in the first place? Feng Na said angrily. Li Yundong suddenly felt a little emotional. He sighed and said with a serious face, times have changed. I'm a Taoist now and the Taekwondo club is like a child's play to me. Li Yundong was telling the truth, but in this world the more the truth the less people would believe it. Feng Na was so angry that her face turned red. Thinking that Li Yundong was just trying to fool her, she was about to lose her temper. Cheng Cheng was afraid that the two of them would quarrel, so she immediately joked, Jinrenli, which sect do you practice? Li Yundong was stunned. He suddenly realized that Su-chan, who had been guiding his cultivation, had never mentioned her sect, so he didn't know which sect he was practicing. But Li Yundong reacted quickly. He raised one hand into a palm, bowed his head and said, Amateus Buddha, I'm just an itinerant immortal under the tomb of the living dead in Zhongnan Mountain. It's not worth mentioning. Although Feng Na was angry, she still burst into laughter and scolded, I think you're an itinerant immortal. You haven't even graduated yet, but you're already living with such a beautiful girl. You must have overdone it last night and tortured her badly, didn't you? *CK. Li Yundong's eyes widened as he stared at Feng Na. He was shocked by her bold words. Feng Na's face reddened slightly, but she refused to back down. Am I wrong? She said, glaring at him. Am I wrong? Li Yundong nodded heavily. Of course you're wrong. Su-chan and I are in a pure relationship. You're a man and a woman, but you're still talking about purity? Feng Na and Ching Ching both giggled. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 108. Go to watch net. What Feng Na and Ching Ching said made Li Yundong very depressed, but he couldn't defend himself. If he were in their shoes, he probably wouldn't believe that two people who lived together and acted so intimately with each other didn't have anything to do with each other. While feeling depressed, Li Yundong suddenly felt that he was King Saint. Ching Ching saw Li Yundong's expression and thought that their words had upset him. She tried to smooth things over. By the way, Li Yundong, you guys don't have any classes this afternoon, do you? Li Yundong glanced at her. You sure know a lot about our class. Ching Ching covered her mouth and laughed. You're the absolute focus of our school right now. Every move you make is being tracked on the forum. Even if your class has classes every day, there are posts on the forum. Go to watch net. Li Yundong tilted his head back and laughed. The students at our school have so much free time? Ching Ching laughed. Hehe, you don't have any classes this afternoon anyway. Why don't you come with us to the auditorium to watch a movie? Since when did the auditorium start showing movies? Li Yundong asked curiously. Ching Ching patted Feng Na on the shoulder and explained with a smile, this is all thanks to Big Sis Feng from the student council. If it weren't for her proposal to change the schedule of the auditorium to the evening of the Monday, Wednesday and Friday movies, we wouldn't even be able to watch it. Li Yundong looked at Feng Na and laughed. Oh, I didn't know that this decision was so beneficial to mankind. But I might not go. Feng Na was still feeling proud of herself when she heard Li Yundong say no. She pulled a long face and said, Hey, you're not going to do me the honor of my first time? What do you mean by that? Feng Na's words were so ambiguous that the students in the front row couldn't help but turn to look at her with strange looks. Li Yundong stared at Feng Na with a look of exasperation. Hey, can you stop making people think like that? Feng Na blushed, but she refused to admit defeat. She snorted. You're the one who's thinking dirty. Ching Ching, who was lying on Feng Na's back, chuckled suggestively. Hey, today's movie is pretty good. Li Yundong pressed a hand to his forehead, looking like he couldn't stand the two of them. It's hard not to think dirty. Forget it, I'm afraid of you. I'll go, okay? Tell me, what movie is it? Why are you acting so secretive and sneaky? Feng Na chuckled and said, 3 episodes? Li Yundong mistakenly thought that Feng Na was talking about an X-rated movie. He was so shocked that he almost fell off his seat. His eyes widened so much that his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. What? He stammered. What? He stammered. What did you just say? Feng Na and Ching Ching looked at each other. Both of them were laughing so hard that they covered their mouths. Watch net. Li Yundong grabbed Feng Na's shoulder and glared at her. Hey, are you serious? Are you crazy? Showing this kind of film in the school auditorium? Feng Na was rocking back and forth with laughter. After a while, she forced herself to stop laughing and gave Li Yundong a provocative look. What do you think? I dare to let you go, but you don't have the guts to watch? Li Yundong laughed strangely and said, If you are willing to die, I am willing to bury you. Feng Na held out her hand. It's a deal? Li Yundong high-fived Feng Na. Do you two have any last words? He said. Now hurry up and say it. I'm in a hurry to collect your bodies this afternoon. Oh, and remember to get insurance as soon as possible. Fill in my name as the beneficiary. I've been so poor lately that I've lost my mind. Nothing good comes out of a filthy mouth, Feng Na said. We'll see you in the afternoon. Li Yundong burst into laughter. Okay. See you then. At noon, Su-chan woke up in a daze. Li Yundong took her to the cafeteria for lunch. After that, they hung out in the school gazebo for a while. After that, Li Yundong and Su-chan walked slowly toward the auditorium. Where are we going? Su-chan couldn't help but ask when she noticed that Li Yundong wasn't taking her to class. Where are we going? I don't have any classes this afternoon, Li Yundong said with a smile. I'm taking you to a movie. What's a movie? Su-chan asked. It's a TV with a big screen. Li Yundong explained irresponsibly. What are you looking at? Su-chan asked curiously. Li Yundong grinned wickedly. 3-level movie? But as soon as he said it, he realized that Feng Na actually meant 3 episodes of a movie. Li Yundong slapped his thigh. Sigh. I got tricked by this girl. I was wondering why she had the guts to show a movie like that. She must be tired of living. So there's a TV show this afternoon. Su-chan's eyes lit up when she heard that it was a TV show. TV show? Okay. I like it. Li Yundong shook his head with a wry smile and sighed in his heart. Alas, how could a good girl be poisoned by an evil soap opera? She's like a drug addict who sees drugs every time she listens to a TV show. She's hopeless. The two of them walked for a while until they arrived at a small auditorium next to the school's main hall. When they entered the hall, Li Yundong noticed a white curtain hanging in the middle of the hall. Clearly, it was used for projection. There was also a projector in the middle of the hall's ceiling. Feng Na, Ching Ching, and a few other seniors were busily adjusting the projector. Go watch. The small auditorium, which could hold 500 to 600 people, was full at the moment. They had all heard about the premiere through the school forum. Some of the students were whispering to each other, while others were holding melon seeds and popcorn in their hands. They were chatting while eating. The auditorium was bustling with noise and excitement. The small auditorium was bustling with noise and excitement. Some of the students near the entrance saw Li Yundong and caused a commotion. They had all heard about the premiere through the school forum. Some students near the door saw Li Yundong at a glance, and suddenly there was a commotion, causing the whole crowd to look at Li Yundong. Feng Na, who was busy at the front desk, also saw Li Yundong. She waved at him. Li Yundong led Su-chan to Feng Na under everyone's gaze. Feng Na, he said with a smile. You're so mean. Feng Na stopped what she was doing and laughed. What's wrong with me? Li Yundong laughed. I can't believe you played with me. Feng Na laughed. You're the one with unhealthy thoughts. Li Yundong said, Tell me, what movie are you playing? Feng Na laughed. The days when I lived with a flight attendant. Li Yundong was disappointed. No way. What's so good about that movie? I've already seen it. Su-chan, who was standing beside Li Yundong, immediately said, You didn't watch it. I watched it alone. Li Yundong flicked her forehead with his finger. You watched it all night. How dare you say that? Come on, let's go home. Feng Na stomped her feet. Li Yundong, you're not giving me face. You're not even going to do me the honor of watching it? Li Yundong said with a smile. But then he heard the students in the auditorium start to urge him impatiently. Start playing it. How long do we have to wait? Feng Na turned to the student beside her and said, Go ahead. Take out the disc. The student nodded and opened his laptop bag to take out the disc. Li Yundong glanced at the disc. It was a very old but very classic movie, 400 Years of Terror. Li Yundong didn't like watching TV shows, but he loved watching it. Even though he had seen this movie before, he was still interested in watching it again. He laughed. This movie is not bad. I'll watch it for a while. Feng Na smiled at him. That's more like it. You have to support your senior's work. While the two of them were talking, the student who was playing the movie through the computer and projector suddenly raised his head. His forehead was covered with sweat. I don't think I can play the discs. Feng Na was stunned. No way. Didn't you say that you could play it yesterday? The student was so anxious that beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. But I can't play it now. Feng Na glanced at the students who were getting more and more impatient. She panicked. What should we do? I didn't prepare any other movies. Li Yundong was stunned. No way. You guys are going to collapse on your own? There are so many people waiting for you. Some of the students in the auditorium had already begun to make a ruckus. The auditorium was filled with noise. Ching Ching rolled her eyes. Nana, she said. Bring your film over here. It's just to make up the numbers. It hasn't been shown yet anyway. Feng Na opened her mouth to speak, but then sighed. That's all I can do. Ching Ching, can you go get it for me? Ching Ching chuckled. Where is it? It's in the crack between the third book on my desk, Feng Na said. Ching Ching pointed a finger at Feng Na. You're so sly. You hid it in a place like this. No wonder I couldn't find it. Feng Na glared at her. Go? Only then did Ching Ching turn around and trot away. Fortunately, the girls' dormitory wasn't too far from the auditorium. Less than 10 minutes later, Ching Ching ran back, panting. She handed the disc to Feng Na. Feng Na handed it to the student in charge of playing the movie. Feng Na took the microphone and said, I'm sorry, students. Due to a small equipment malfunction, we delayed your viewing time a little. Today we will be showing the TV series Living with a Stewardess, which we obtained through our internal channel. Tomorrow we will be showing Thriller 400 Years. As soon as she finished speaking, some of the boys in the auditorium booed, while some of the girls clapped and cheered. Li Yundong looked at the disc in their hands. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that the words on it were very, very familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen it. He chuckled. You're actually playing a TV series? Don't tell me you really want to play 3 episodes at once. Feng Na rolled her eyes at Li Yundong. What if I want to play 4 episodes at once? Li Yundong feigned a look of shock. So it's a 4th grade movie then. It's so revealing. Feng Na and Ching Ching burst into laughter. Their cheeks were a little red. Just as they were about to speak, the film was suddenly played. Then the entire auditorium fell silent. Several people turned their heads to look at the projection screen. A beautiful woman appeared on the screen. She had red lips and white teeth. Her features were picturesque and her cheeks were a little chubby. She had the face of an angel, but her body was sexy and hot. As soon as the beautiful woman appeared on the screen, everyone in the auditorium froze. It wasn't because she was too stunning, but because she looked very familiar to all the boys and girls in the auditorium. Li Yundong stared at the screen and swallowed hard. He was flabbergasted. Feng Na and Ching Ching were the same. Their bodies were frozen in place and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Li Yundong's mouth was dry, and his back was drenched in sweat. He suddenly remembered that this disc was a blockbuster movie of a Japanese celebrity that he had collected. Li Yundong jerked his head around and looked at Su Chan. Did you bring this disc out of your house? Su Chan glanced at Li Yundong timidly. She knew that she couldn't deny it, so she nodded meekly. I'm going to faint. Li Yundong was already half a cultivator, and he was only 1 step away from becoming a real cultivator. His willpower was extraordinary, but he still nearly fainted in this situation. After a moment of dead silence in the auditorium, a boy suddenly shouted, Holy shit! Is this what it's like to live with a stewardess? Is Sora Aoi a stewardess too? Li Yundong was sweating profusely. He was sweating profusely. This is bad. The 4th-rate movie has really become a 4th-rate movie. Advertisement. I strongly recommend Bragging Dongman's new book, The King of 9 and 5. This is definitely a good book. If everyone is interested, why don't you take a look? Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 109. Go to the Internet. After a loud shout came out from the small auditorium, a burst of wild laughter that was loud enough to lift the roof of the auditorium soon broke out. Go to the Internet. The boys laughed wildly and made a lot of noise. Some of the girls were blushing, and some covered their eyes with their hands, not daring to look at the screen. However, there was a gap between the fingers covering their eyes. Feng Na, Ching Ching, and the student who was playing the video were all stunned. They stood there in a daze, unable to react at all. Li Yundong shuddered and took a big stride forward. He immediately rushed to the machine and pressed the stop button. As soon as the video disappeared, the students in the auditorium shouted, "Don't stop. Keep playing it. Change the sex. I've seen this before. It's coded. I want to see Ozamaria's video. Brother, you're so awesome. I can't believe you played this kind of video. I've decided to worship you. Yamadu. Don't stop, Yamadu." The auditorium was in an uproar. The boys were stomping their feet and laughing wildly. Some of the girls were also laughing. Only Li Yundong, Feng Na, and the others were on the stage sweating. They couldn't laugh at all. "How did you get my disc here?" Li Yundong stared at Su Chan, his eyes wide open. Su Chan knew she was in big trouble again. She lowered her head and said weakly, "I broke the original video and happened to see this one. I was afraid you would scold me, so I..." Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He rubbed his temples and said, "This is going to be fun." Feng Na came back to her senses. "What? This is your video?" Li Yundong smiled bitterly. "I think so." Feng Na stomped her feet and said bitterly, "How could you make such a mistake? If the teacher finds out, you'll be expelled." Ching Ching couldn't help but ask, "Hey, you're such a prank. So what if it's a video? Why did you put your name on it? And it's the days when you lived with the stewardess. How could it be so coincidental?" Li Yundong rolled his eyes. "Is there something wrong with the name? I was so proud of myself when I picked the name. Besides, isn't it my own business what I write on my disc?" Feng Na spat and anxiously scolded, "Bah! How is this your problem? I'm in trouble because of you." As if to prove Feng Na's words, an angry shout suddenly came from the entrance of the small auditorium. Then a teacher rushed in. Li Yundong took a closer look. Oh, it was an old acquaintance. It was Director Qian, who wore gold-rimmed glasses and had a divisional cadre haircut. Director Qian rushed to the front of the stage and waved his arms excitedly like a Red Guard wiping out a counter-revolutionary. Who put it there? This is too much. How dare they play this kind of film in school?" Director Qian's appearance made Feng Na's face turn pale. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but her mind was blank. To watch the net. As a girl, it would be a huge stain on her record for the rest of her life if she was expelled for the crime of gathering people to play pornographic videos. If it was more serious, she could even be directly arrested and sent to the police station. Li Yundong knew that this matter was more or less caused by him, so he stepped forward without hesitation. "It was me," he said loudly. "It has nothing to do with them." Director Qian stared at Li Yundong with his beady eyes. He sneered inwardly. "I was worried that I wouldn't be able to use something against you, and now you've come knocking on my door." Director Qian snorted and laughed mockingly. "Oh, you think this is some heroic thing? You actually agreed to it so confidently." By now Li Yundong had calmed down. He thought to himself, "I'm definitely going to be expelled this time. I can take this kind of punishment, but Feng Na can't. If worst comes to worst, I'll just quit school and focus on cultivation with this little girl. If Feng Na is expelled, what will she do? A girl with this kind of bad reputation will never be able to hold her head up high for the rest of her life." "It's not that I'm confident," Li Yundong said in a low voice. "It's just that I have to bear the consequences of my own actions. But this is just a misunderstanding. I took the wrong disc from home and that's why this happened." Su Chan was about to say something when Li Yundong turned his head and glared at her. Director Qian let out a strange laugh. "Stop quibbling, Li Yundong. I think you've lost your mind from being a hero. How could you do something like this?" Feng Na snapped out of her daze. She stared at Li Yundong with wide eyes, her lips trembling. She wanted to say something but she couldn't. Her eyes were filled with shock, gratitude, worry, fear, and a trace of guilt. Li Yundong saw the look in her eyes and smiled at her. He nodded at her, telling her not to worry. Seeing that Li Yundong was still in the mood to flirt with a beautiful woman after committing such a serious crime, Director Qian was furious. He stomped his foot and said loudly, "Li Yundong, I am now officially informing you that you are suspended. The school committee is going to discuss your actions and give you an answer after that. Li Yundong said. You can go home and wait for the verdict. However, I can tell you in advance that given the vile nature of today's incident, you won't be able to escape the fate of being expelled. Li Yundong also had nothing to lose. He said very straightforwardly, as you wish. Director Qian rolled his eyes at Li Yundong's words. He sneered and snorted on the stage. Go to the internet. Rainbow Carrot Literature % super #speed. Update. Some of the students below the stage heard what they said clearly. Some of the bolder students hid in the crowd and booed loudly, thinking that the law couldn't punish all of them. As long as one person did something like this, a second person would soon follow suit and then a third. Not long after, the small auditorium was filled with boos and curses. Director Chen grabbed the microphone and yelled, "What are you shouting for? None of you are going to run away. All of you will be given demerits." In an instant, the small auditorium fell silent. Director Chen looked down at the audience with his head held high, looking insufferably arrogant. But soon the students in the audience were so angry that they went berserk. They booed and cursed loudly enough to hurt one's eardrums. Some students even threw their belongings at Director Chen. Director Chen immediately covered his head and scurried off the stage. When he reached the door, he turned his head and stomped his feet to look at the rebellious students in the auditorium. He opened his mouth and was about to say something when he suddenly saw a black pile of trash being thrown at him. Director Chen was so scared that he turned around and ran. The students in the auditorium burst into laughter when they saw Director Chen running away in a panic. They all turned around and looked at Li Yundong, who was standing on the stage with a dumbfounded look on his face. They all cheered loudly and some even whistled loudly. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He picked up the microphone and coughed dryly. Students. As soon as he said those two words, the students in the auditorium were so excited that they started cheering loudly. They were the most ordinary of students. They had thought that their university life would pass by peacefully, and become a memory that was neither gray nor white. Only now did they realize that Li Yundong's appearance had suddenly made their campus life more colorful. Most of the things related to Li Yundong were not good, and most of them were violent incidents. But for the bored students, it was enough to stimulate them and give them enough to talk about before and after tea. What happened today made them feel even more excited. Besides, students were hot-blooded and impulsive. Taking advantage of the fact that the law did not punish the majority, they immediately did something like rebellion. Li Yundong's previous deeds sounded scary, but the ability he showed made the students of Tiannan University fear him. They didn't dare to get close to him. After all, not everyone was as good at fighting as Li Yundong. But when Sora Aoi's film was shown in the auditorium, the students suddenly realized, oh, so this guy is like us. He's very vulgar, very perverted. But I like it. Li Yundong was caught in a dilemma by the noise in the auditorium. He raised his hand awkwardly and lowered his voice. Ahem, students, stop fooling around. What happened today was just an accident. I didn't mean to show this film. Immediately, a boy in the audience shouted, yes, I believe you didn't mean to. Li Yundong looked at him gratefully. There were still good people in this world. There was justice. But soon the boy shouted, I believe you did it on purpose. After these words, the auditorium was filled with wild laughter. Li Yundong was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. This kind of thing can only happen in a crappy university like this. What kind of people are these? Li Yundong waited for the students in the auditorium to quiet down a little. He continued, anyway, what happened today was an accident. I really didn't mean to, and I didn't mean to. At this point, the students below the stage began to chuckle again. Li Yundong said, what happened today was all my fault. It has nothing to do with Senior Feng Na. I gave her the wrong disc. Please be sure to prove it when the time comes. Although the students in the audience didn't know why Li Yundong had given her the wrong disc, they still shouted in agreement. They all smiled and looked excited. Li Yundong continued, when the time comes, I will accept whatever punishment the school gives me. But I hope you won't make a scene. It would be bad if it affects your studies. Well, that's all I have to say. After saying that, he put down the microphone, took Su Chan's hand and walked quickly out of the auditorium. When he left, the students in the auditorium acted as if they hadn't heard what he had said before. They cheered even louder and applauded as if Li Yundong had done something heroic. Cheng Cheng watched Li Yundong leave with her mouth agape. No way, she said. He can get this kind of treatment by putting a disc? Isn't this too inconceivable? Feng Na stared blankly at Li Yundong's back and sighed faintly. Because he is Li Yundong. Just as the two of them were lamenting, Director Chen suddenly returned with a few burly school security guards following behind him. Director Chen put his hands on his hips and shouted, "Where is Li Yundong? Where is Li Yundong?" "He's dead," a bold student shouted. Director Chen was stunned. "Dead? That's impossible. He was alive and kicking just now. Did he commit suicide to avoid punishment?" When the students heard that, they booed again. Some students hid in the crowd and shouted, "Some people are dead but he's still alive. Some people are alive but he's already dead." Zhang Kejia's famous sentence made the students in the small auditorium burst into laughter again. A new wave of boos came crashing down on Director Chen. Director Chen's face turned red. He was so angry that he stomped his feet and shouted at the security guards behind him, "Arrest them all. Don't let any of them go. Take down the student numbers." This sentence was so harsh that the students were in an uproar. A student shouted, "He's going to catch us all in one fell swoop. Brothers and sisters, let's go. Let's go to the door." As soon as he finished speaking, the 500-plus people in the small auditorium rushed toward Director Chen like a torrential flood. Director Chen was so scared that his face turned pale. His legs trembled, but he still wanted to put on the airs of a teaching director. He pointed at the students in front of him and shouted, "Hey you, stop right there." He turned his head and wanted to ask the security guards to stop the audacious students. But when he looked back, he saw that the security guards had already run out of the door in fear. Director Chen groaned inwardly. He wanted nothing more than to curse the security guards who had abandoned him. But then he remembered that he had always been the one to run first. Could this be retribution? The thought flashed through Director Chen's mind before he was drowned by the flood of students behind him. His head of department was instantly swallowed up by the sea of students. When all the students in the auditorium were gone, the security guards who had fled earlier carefully surrounded Director Chen. They looked at each other in confusion. Is he still alive? A security guard poked Director Chen's fat belly with his finger and asked weakly, "Maybe?" Another security guard looked at the dense footprints on Director Chen's body and grimaced. He felt a faint pain all over his body. Last weekend's final result was 8th place. This week I broke the record 3 times, namely on Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Please wait. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 110. Go to watch Nat. After a while, Director Chen finally got to his feet. Even though his muscles felt like they were about to be torn apart, he still didn't forget to tidy up his hair. Go to watch Nat. 7 km. Go to watch Nat. Super under speed. More. No. But now his hair was piled up in a messy pile like dried straw. It was a complete mess after the catastrophe. "Q Director Chen, are you okay?" the security guard asked tentatively. Director Chen pushed his glasses up with his hand and realized that they had fallen off. He crouched down and fumbled around the floor. "Where are my glasses?" The security guard quickly found them and handed them to him. Department Chief Chen accepted the glasses with trembling hands. As soon as he put them on the bridge of his nose, the broken lenses fell to the ground. It was a comical sight to behold. The security guard next to him couldn't help but burst into laughter. But then he realized that laughing was disrespectful to his superior, so he immediately straightened his face and the corners of his mouth twitched. Director Chen glared viciously at the 2 security guards who had deserted him at the last minute. He vented all of his anger on Li Yundong, gritting his teeth. "Li Yundong, I'm not done with you." After pulling Su Chan out of the auditorium, he quickly walked to a place where there were fewer people. He stopped and stared at Su Chan without saying a word. Under his stare, Su Chan lowered her head and pouted. Finally, she couldn't stand it anymore. She tugged at his sleeve and said in a low voice, "All right, I know I was wrong." Li Yundong sighed and said, "Do you know how serious today's matter is? You almost got Feng Na killed. Do you know that?" Su Chan didn't dare to refute him. "Oh. Tell me," Li Yundong said with a straight face. "What did you do wrong?" "I shouldn't have given it to you," Su Chan muttered, her fingers twisting together. "I shouldn't have given it to you." Li Yundong chuckled. "What? You broke the disc. You shouldn't have kept it from me." Su Chan raised her eyes to look at Li Yundong, then quickly lowered her head. "Oh." Li Yundong continued to say with a straight face, "Don't hide anything from me in the future." Su Chan replied weakly, "Oh." Li Yundong snorted. "Let's go." "Where are we going?" she asked timidly. "Go home," Li Yundong said. "Watch Net." Su Chan couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "You said that I killed Feng Na, but you took responsibility for it. Did I kill you too?" Seeing the little girl's pitiful appearance, how could Li Yundong still be angry? He was so angry that he laughed and used his hand to pinch the little lass's nose. "Mia, I met you and I was killed by you." Su Chan was keenly aware that although his words sounded fierce, his tone showed that he was no longer angry. "Hey, what are you doing?" Li Yundong yelled. "What are you doing?" Su Chan boldly threw herself onto Li Yundong's back. Su Chan giggled. "I'm hugging you in case you get sick of me and dump me." Li Yundong couldn't help but laugh. He let the girl climb onto his back, then smacked her butt with his hand. "Don't be naughty again," he said. "That's what you get for being naughty. Do you dare to do it again?" Su Chan twisted her body, pressing her full breasts against Li Yundong's back, making him feel the majesty of her surging waves. The two of them returned home. Not long after, Li Yundong's phone rang from inside his school bag. "That's weird. I didn't bring my phone." Li Yundong opened his school bag and saw that it was the phone Zhou Qin had given to Su Chan. He handed the phone to Su Chan. "I think it's Zhou Qin." Su Chan took the phone and shouted at it like she was holding a brick. "Hello?" Li Yundong laughed, took the phone from her hand and pressed the answer button. Then he handed the phone back to her. "You idiot, you have to press the answer button." "Oh," Su Chan said, taking the phone and saying weakly, "Hello?" "Hello, Su Chan? This is Zhou Qin. I'm looking for Li Yundong. Go to the internet." Zhou Qin's voice came out of the phone. Su Chan handed the phone back to Li Yundong. "It's for you. Rainbow carrot asterisk literature underscore learning % super hashtag fast. Update." Li Yundong took the phone and asked, "Miss Zhou, don't tell me you're looking for me because of what happened in the auditorium." Zhou Qin said, "What else is there besides this? I heard from Feng Na on the phone that you're in big trouble this time. What's going on? Can you tell me?" Li Yundong sighed and told her the whole story. Zhou Qin was stunned. "No way. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? But I did see this CD at your house last time, but I didn't expect it to be this kind of film." Li Yundong smiled bitterly. "How could I know that this kind of film could be leaked? And I almost released it in public. I'm going to die miserably." Zhou Qin laughed and said, "It's okay. This kind of thing can be big or small. You should have a good rest at home for the next few days. I'll find a way to help you solve it in a few days." Li Yundong sighed and said, "How can I trouble you again?" Zhou Qin smiled and said, "As long as you don't mind my father making trouble for you." The two chatted on the phone for a while. Zhou Qin seemed to hesitate for a moment and said, "By the way, last time I heard you say that you were going to work during the summer vacation?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "Yes, you remember it so clearly. You're not going to arrange a job for me, are you?" Zhou Qin smiled and said, "What are you talking about? How dare I arrange a job for you? However, I have a friend who runs a company. Now the company is short of a person. She asked me if I had any useful friends who could recommend her to do her a favor, so I boldly recommended you." Hearing this, Li Yundong's heart was filled with emotion. Zhou Qin looked cold and arrogant, but she treated him so well. She thought of everything for him and even said that she was so polite when she helped him find a job. Li Yundong's heart was filled with emotion. If this went on, he would owe her so much. How could he pay her back? Zhou Qin saw that Li Yundong was silent on the phone for a long time, so she thought that he was a little angry and unhappy. She asked tentatively, "If you don't want to go, then don't go. It doesn't matter." Li Yundong was silent for a while, then sighed slightly in his heart and said, "Which company?" Zhou Qin breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Dongxing Real Estate Company Limited." Li Yundong was surprised and said, "Real estate company? What can I do there?" Zhou Qin smiled and said, "That depends on the arrangement of the boss. Maybe he will arrange for you to be a secretary. By the way, my friend is a great beauty. There are also many beautiful women in the company. You have to control your eyes. Don't make Su Chan sad." Su Chan had been listening to them. When she heard this, she immediately shouted, "No, no, I want to go with you." Li Yundong was amused and flicked his finger on her forehead. "Go away, don't make a scene." Zhou Qin heard Su Chan's voice on the phone and giggled. She said loudly, "Su Chan, you have to control Li Yundong. Otherwise he will be seduced by other women." Su Chan nodded vigorously and echoed in a loud voice, "That's right." Li Yundong glared at the little girl and then said to Zhou Qin, "Hey, don't fan the flames or I won't go." Zhou Qin only knew that Li Yundong was angry. She pursed her lips and smiled at the other end of the computer. Don't be like that. This is a rare opportunity. The salary in that company is very high. When Li Yundong heard this, he became interested and asked, how high? Zhou Qin smiled and said, are you a money grubber? About 2 or 3 stories high. Li Yundong sighed and said, only 2 or 3 stories high. My debt is almost as deep as a 10,000-foot tall building. What's the use of 2 or 3 stories? Zhou Qin held the phone and was silent for a while. There was a trace of emotion at the corner of her mouth. Li Yundong, you are really arrogant. You don't want the money my father gave you. Do you want the money you earned with your own hands? In today's society, it is not easy to earn money. Did you not want my father's money because of your own pride, or because you have other ideas about me? Thinking of this, Zhou Qin suddenly found that her cheeks were a little hot. She put down the phone and touched her hot cheeks. Then she turned her head to look at a mirror in her house. She saw a beautiful girl in the mirror with her cheeks flushed, like white jade. She was so beautiful that she could not be compared. For a moment, Zhou Qin was stunned. She reached out her hand and touched the beauty in the mirror with her soft fingertips. She thought to herself, what a beautiful girl. You are no worse than Su Chan, but why is he not tempted by you? Seeing that Zhou Qin was silent, Li Yundong thought that he had gone too far. He smiled and said, I was joking. Thank you for introducing me to the job. I really need money now. Zhou Qin smiled silently, and her voice suddenly became very soft. Li Yundong, you don't have to be so polite. We are friends, right? If you are really in need of money, I have some savings here. Can I lend you some first? Li Yundong said without hesitation, no, I'm not in such a hurry for the time being. When I really can't stand it anymore, I'll ask you for money, okay? Zhou Qin sighed faintly in her heart. You are so polite. I'm afraid that even if you starve to death, you won't ask me to borrow money, will you? As I expected, this guy's arrogance really comes from his bones. If it weren't for the fact that I have a good relationship with him, I'm afraid that he would even refuse to help him find a job. Zhou Qin told Li Yundong the time and address to meet at the company. After hanging up the phone, she couldn't help turning her head to look at herself in the mirror. She pointed at herself with her slender fingers and said, Zhou Qin, you actually fell in love with such a guy. You will suffer in the future. After a while, Zhou Qin picked up her cell phone and dialed a number. When the phone was connected, she said, hello, Mengfan? Do you remember what I told you last time? A shrewd and capable voice came from the phone. Qin? It's about your friend, isn't it? I remember it's tomorrow morning, right? Okay, let him come to the company directly. Zhou Qin smiled and said, then I'll have to trouble you. The person I'm introducing is really strong. You have to use good steel on the edge of the blade. A string of silver bell-like laughter came from the other end of the phone. Oh Zhou Qin, when did you start praising people? This is a rare thing that only happens once in 100 years. I have to carefully examine this strong man tomorrow and help you check him. Zhou Qin laughed and said, hey, don't play tricks on me. As soon as she said this, she heard a burst of loud laughter coming from the phone, followed by a busy tone. Zhou Qin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She picked up her cell phone and wanted to call her friend to make it clear, but no matter how she dialed, she couldn't get the busy tone. She wanted to call Li Yundong again and tell him to be mentally prepared, but on second thought, she was afraid that the arrogant guy would think too much and lose his temper. Zhou Qin bit her lip in a dilemma, worrying about gains and losses. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 111. Go to watch net. The next day, after Li Yundong had finished practicing qi in the living room, he exhaled a straight white breath and slowly woke up from his meditation. Go to watch net. 7 kOM. Since he had an interview with Zhou Qin that day, Li Yundong found the suit he had bought during the shopping trip that had bankrupted him last time. Li Yundong put on the suit and put on his leather shoes. He looked at himself in the mirror with satisfaction. A handsome, masculine and imposing man was showing off in front of the mirror. After tidying himself up, Li Yundong wanted to sneak out of the room without waking Su Chan up. But as soon as he stepped out of the bedroom, he saw Su Chan standing in front of his bedroom with sleepy eyes. Su Chan was going to go to the bathroom, but when she saw Li Yundong, she immediately woke up. Well, you're going out without me, she said coquettishly. Li Yundong smiled. I'm going to apply for a job. What are you doing here? Su Chan blinked. What do you mean by applying for a job? Li Yundong pinched Su Chan's cheek and smiled. It means looking for a job and working hard to earn money to support you, little beauty. Su Chan hugged Li Yundong's arm and said coquettishly, "Then I have to go with you." "Be a good girl," Li Yundong said. "Wait for me at home today. I'll come back when I've applied for a job, okay?" Su Chan pouted unhappily. "You're lying. You said you wouldn't leave me behind." Li Yundong laughed. "Good girl," he said. "How can I go looking for a job with a little tail like you behind me? Besides, you're so pretty. What if someone finds you and doesn't like me? Wouldn't that be the end of me?" Li Yundong thought to himself, "There are so many lecherous rich people nowadays. If they like you, won't I be in a lot of trouble? It's safer to keep a mistress in a house." Su Chan was still a child, so when she heard Li Yundong praise her beauty, she immediately beamed with joy. She remembered the trouble she had caused Li Yundong in the past and felt very guilty, so she said, "Then I'll wait for you at home." Li Yundong smiled and said, "Okay, there's food in the fridge. If you're hungry, go get it yourself." Su Chan wrapped her arms around his waist and leaned against his chest. She raised her head and said in a sweet voice, "I don't want to eat. I want to eat the hot food you make for me when you come back. I'm hungry. Let's see if your heart aches for not taking me out." Li Yundong laughed heartily and wrapped his arms around the girl's waist. He kissed her hard, then ruffled her hair. "Go to sleep," he said. "I'm leaving. Watch net." After that, he bade farewell to the little girl and left the room. Reluctantly, Su Chan ran to the balcony and watched as Li Yundong left. Coincidentally, Li Yundong was looking up at the same time. Their eyes met. Even though they were separated by a long distance, they could clearly feel each other's longing and attachment. The little girl waved her hand and shouted, "Come back soon." "Okay." Li Yundong replied from the bottom of the stairs. Li Yundong's heart warmed, as if he had a beautiful and gentle wife waiting for him at home. Although this wife was a little naughty, didn't know how to do housework and didn't know how to cook. But he loved her, so what could he do? "Sigh, from now on, I have to take responsibility for this family." Li Yundong suddenly felt a weight on his shoulders, but his whole body seemed to be filled with endless energy. He was full of vigor and fighting spirit. The little girl shouted from the balcony, attracting many people's attention, including Ruan Hongling, who was practicing qi on the balcony. When Ruan Hongling heard the voice, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. She faintly felt that there was a seductive fox in the voice. It didn't sound like the voice of an ordinary person. She finished a cycle, exhaled, and turned her head to look in the direction of the voice. She saw a very familiar figure flash by. Ruan Hongling suddenly frowned, and her heart became vigilant. Why does this figure look so much like that fox which? Ruan Hongling wanted to check it out, but she was in the mortal world and it was broad daylight. Ruan Hongling didn't dare to act rashly. She stared thoughtfully at the place where Su Chan had disappeared. Since Li Yundong didn't have the little girl by his side, he didn't extravagantly take a taxi. Instead, he followed the crowd and squeezed into the bus. He was not short, about 1.75 meters tall, and he was handsome, which was very eye-catching. Moreover, his body was full of strong essence qi, and there seemed to be a huge magnetic field within 5 meters of his body. As long as a man entered this magnetic field, he would feel uncomfortable and ashamed of himself because of Li Yundong's heroic spirit. As long as a woman entered this magnetic field, the yin qi in her body would be moved by Li Yundong's strong yang qi, and she would feel good about it. Go to see the net. 7 This was the principle that like repels and opposites attract. At this time, Li Yundong was at the threshold of cultivation. He didn't know how to restrain his aura, nor did he know how to hide it. Therefore, no matter where Li Yundong went, he was the focus of everyone's attention. When he finally arrived, Li Yundong looked up at the towering high-rise building in front of him. For a moment he was a little dazed. In this strict steel forest, where should a cultivator go? When will I have such a building? Li Yundong calmed himself down and walked calmly into the Dongxing building. "Hello, I'm looking for Yin Mingfan, President Yin," Li Yundong said politely, neither servile nor overbearing. The receptionist was texting with her head down. When she heard that he was looking for Yin Mingfan, she raised her head casually. However, when she saw that the boy in front of her was handsome and had an indescribable temperament, her eyes suddenly lit up, and the smile on her face became much more enthusiastic. "Do you have an appointment?" Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, "I think so." The receptionist looked through the appointment record and asked, "What's your surname, please?" Li Yundong said, "Li." The receptionist smiled and said, "Mr. Li, right? President Yin has been waiting for you for a while. Please come with me." The receptionist led Li Yundong to the elevator door. Along the way she kept glancing at Li Yundong out of the corner of her eye, thinking to herself, it's rare to see such a handsome and masculine boy. I wonder if he has a girlfriend. Alas, he must have one. Such good cow dung must have been filled with flowers long ago. How could Li Yundong know what the beautiful receptionist was thinking? After the elevator opened, he nodded politely to the receptionist and said, "Thank you." The receptionist smiled and said, "You're welcome. Please go to the 19th floor. Turn right and you'll see President Yin's office." Li Yundong smiled and thanked her again. The receptionist watched Li Yundong's figure disappear into the closed elevator door. She suddenly felt a little lost. She stood there in a daze for a long time before returning to the front desk. She didn't want to send a text message. She rested her chin on her elbow and stared blankly at the front desk. After a while, the receptionist suddenly felt someone pat her on the shoulder. She turned her head and saw a baby-faced girl about 1.6 meters tall looking at her with a smile. "Shenhui? Oh no, Miss Shen?" The receptionist was shocked. "Are you here to see President Yin?" Shen Hui looked at the receptionist with a smile, her face almost sticking to her face. She smiled ambiguously and mysteriously and said, "I'm on summer vacation. Dad insisted that I come here for an internship. Why were you in a daze just now? You look so infatuated. According to my experience, you must be infatuated with a beautiful man." The receptionist nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, a handsome man just came. He was so handsome and elegant. I've never seen such a handsome man. He also went to see President Yin. You can find him yourself." Shen Hui rolled her eyes and said, "Really? Then I have to go and have a look." After that, she didn't need anyone to lead the way and rushed into the elevator. The receptionist looked at Shen Hui's departing figure and suddenly thought, that handsome man is a good match for Miss Shen. Alas, I won't be able to get him anyway. When Li Yundong took the elevator to the 19th floor, the moment the elevator door opened, there stood a beautiful woman in a well-ironed business suit with a pair of thick black-rimmed glasses on the bridge of her nose. She was beautiful, mature, and had a sexy figure. When Li Yundong saw this woman, he was stunned. Although he had the little girl Su Chan by his side, a word still jumped out of his mind: stunner. The woman was about 1.7 meters tall. Her black uniform accentuated her twin peaks. Every button on her white shirt was buttoned up tightly, making people want to tear it apart. Her waist was slender, and the waistline of the black uniform outlined her waist. These two curves suddenly expanded when she reached the bottom, outlining the shape of a gourd. Li Yundong didn't even need to stand behind her to look at her. He could guess from this amazing arc that this woman's **** must be very perky and plump. The surprise in Li Yundong's eyes flashed, and the woman's eyes also flashed with interest. She carefully looked at Li Yundong. The two of them looked at each other at the door, smiled politely and nodded. When Li Yundong passed by the beautiful woman at the door, he subconsciously turned his head to look at the woman's breasts. Sure enough, he found that the woman's breasts were like two perfectly round watermelon petals, full and perky. The woman seemed to know that Li Yundong was looking at her. She took a step into the elevator, twisted her waist, and her round breasts trembled, looking astonishingly elastic. Li Yundong found that his mouth was a little dry. He didn't dare to look anymore. He took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the rising desire in his lower abdomen, and his eyes became clear again. The beautiful woman in the elevator was surprised to see that Li Yundong's eyes had become calm and indifferent in an instant. After the elevator door closed, she muttered with interest, "It's rare to see such a boy nowadays. I don't know if he's here to apply for a job or just to run errands." While she was thinking, the elevator had already reached the first floor. But after thinking for a moment, she pressed the button for the 19th floor, and the elevator continued to run up. After Li Yundong got out of the elevator, he saw many female white-collar workers in professional clothes in the corridor of the 19th floor. Each of them was young and beautiful. As Zhou Qin had said, there were many beautiful women in the company. Li Yundong walked through the corridor without looking sideways. Some female employees who saw him stopped and then turned their heads to look at his back. They watched him until he came to Yin Mingfan's office. Then they whispered excitedly, "Is this a new colleague? He's very hot. He's my type." "Bah, every man is your type. This is my type. No one can take him away. You don't have to be so infatuated, do you? Maybe he's just here to collect the electricity bill." The female employees giggled. "Looking for Mr. Yin to collect the electricity bill? You have a rich imagination." The female employee who had been silent all this time suddenly said, "Stop talking and get to work." Such a wonderful man may have been kept by a rich woman long ago. How can you be infatuated here? These words made these white-collared beauties lose interest one by one. Li Yundong stood at the door. Although he was far away from them, he could still hear these words clearly. He was a little embarrassed and knocked on the door with an unnatural expression. A shrewd and capable voice came from inside the door. Please come in. Li Yundong closed his eyes slightly and adjusted the qi in his body. When he opened them again, he calmly pushed the door open and walked in. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 112. Go to Watch Network. As soon as he entered the door, Li Yundong saw a large luxurious desk near the floor-to-ceiling window in the spacious and comfortable office. On the desk was a gold plate with black characters "Yin Meng Fan." A woman was sitting in a long and tall office chair, looking down at documents. Like most of the professional women in the building, this woman was wearing a dark blue uniform. Her hair was black and long, half of it draped over her shoulders, and the other half fell on one side of her face like a waterfall due to her bowed posture. Li Yundong entered the door and saw that the other party didn't greet him. He quickly glanced around the office, then stood there quietly without saying a word. Yin Meng Fan didn't seem to know that someone had entered the room. She just lowered her head and looked at the documents. The office was as quiet as a cemetery, and only the sound of flipping through documents could be heard from time to time. If it had been the old Li Yundong, he might have been a little impatient and couldn't stand still after being ignored by Yin Meng Fan like this. But now that Li Yundong had succeeded in qi refining, he sat cross-legged like a bell for a few hours, motionless. Although he had been ignored by Yin Meng Fan, he did not feel embarrassed at all. After a short period of observation, he looked down and began to meditate. Although Yin Meng Fan had been looking down at the documents, she had actually been looking at the boy in front of her out of the corner of her eye. After looking at him for a while, Yin Meng Fan nodded in her heart. Not bad. He stands like a pine tree and looks heroic. In such an environment he can still maintain his composure, and he is so young. It's rare, really rare. It's not unreasonable for Zhou Qin to think so highly of this boy. Thinking of this, Yin Meng Fan raised her head and said to Li Yundong with a smile, "It's Li Yundong, isn't it?" Li Yundong nodded and said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Yes." Yin Meng Fan was about to speak when the office door was suddenly pushed open. There was a flash of anger in her eyes. She would never allow anyone to come in without knocking on the door. But when she fixed her eyes on him, she saw Shen Hui poking her head in from outside and looking at her with a smile. Yin Meng Fan's anger turned into joy. She smiled and said, "It's you. Wait, I have something to do now. I'll look for you later." Shen Hui curiously looked at the man standing in the room with his back to her. She vaguely felt that this figure was a little familiar. She smiled and waved at Yin Meng Fan. "Then I'll go find someone else to play." After that, Shen Hui looked at Li Yundong's back a few more times, then closed the door. Watch Net. Literature. After Yin Meng Fan saw Shen Hui close the door, she looked at Li Yundong in surprise and said to herself, "This boy has a strong will. He didn't even look back just now. Is he a soldier?" Yin Meng Fan decided not to wait any longer. She put away the documents in her hand and said politely with a smile, "Sorry to keep you waiting. Please sit down." "It doesn't matter," Li Yundong said politely. After he finished speaking, he sat down on the bench at the side of the office. His buttocks only sat on half of the bench and his upper body was still straight like a sharp sword. Yin Meng Fan looked at him and sighed. She thought to herself, "I don't know if he really has such a temperament or if he is pretending. However, since Zhou Qin admires him so much, he must have something special about him, right?" Yin Meng Fan asked with a smile, "You are Zhou Qin's friend, and I am also Zhou Qin's friend. So let's cut the crap. Can you tell me what your specialty is?" Li Yundong, who had been calm the whole time, was stunned by this question. "What's my specialty?" Li Yundong was suddenly a little tongue-tied. He muttered to himself, "My specialty is cultivation, beating people, and massaging. Is this a specialty?" To tell the truth, this was also a specialty, but he couldn't say it out loud. Li Yundong suddenly felt so depressed that he wanted to turn around and leave, because he found that he really didn't know anything else besides this. Yin Meng Fan saw him in a daze and thought that he hadn't come back to his senses, so she asked again, "What do you know?" Li Yundong was still tongue-tied. Yin Meng Fan frowned in her heart. She asked patiently, "Have you studied accounting?" Li Yundong shook his head. Yin Meng Fan asked again, "Have you studied finance?" Li Yundong still shook his head. Yin Mingfan frowned. Have you ever been a salesman? Li Yundong shook his head again gloomily. Yin Mingfan shouted in her heart, no way. Zhou Qin actually recommended a man who looks like gold and jade on the outside but looks like wax on the inside. This guy looks good but he's useless. What on earth can he do? Yin Mingfan was too embarrassed to ask again. There was a faint trace of contempt in her eyes, but she still said politely, I understand. Wait a minute. As she said this, she picked up the phone and said, Xiaojia, come here for a moment. Go to the internet. 7KOM. Net. Super_speed. More. No. After a while, a young white-collar worker came in and said, Mr. Yin, what can I do for you? Yin Mingfan spread out her palm toward Li Yundong and said, take Mr. Li to Sister Xia and ask her to arrange his work. After that, she lowered her head again and no longer looked at Li Yundong. Li Yundong frowned in his heart. His pride made him want to turn around and leave, but on second thought he was not living alone now. There was still Su Chan waiting for him to raise. How could he lose his temper like a child? Li Yundong calmed down and nodded to the white-collar worker named Xiaojia. Hello, sorry to trouble you. Xiaojia was a girl with a few cute freckles on her face. Her age and temperament made her look like a wily old fox who had just started working. She obviously had a good impression of Li Yundong. She smiled sweetly and said, please come with me. As soon as Li Yundong was let out of the door, he saw the sexy stunner he had met in the elevator walking over from not far away. As soon as the beautiful woman saw Li Yundong, her eyes lit up. She looked him up and down carefully as if she wanted to swallow him up in one gulp. Her eyes were watery and full of affection, which was extremely attractive. When the two of them passed each other, the beautiful woman smiled and said to Xiaojia, who was walking in front of her, Xiaojia, is this handsome guy a new employee of your company? Xiaojia smiled and said, hello, President Chao. Yes. The beautiful woman's heart skipped a beat. She reached out to Li Yundong and said with a smile, hello, I'm Chao Kefi from Huaxing International Entertainment Company, Limited on the 9th floor of this building. Li Yundong politely reached out his hand. As soon as he shook it, he felt that the woman's hand was wet, soft, and boneless. However, Chao Kefi felt that Li Yundong's palm was warm and strong, giving people a strong sense of strength and security. She liked the boy in front of her more and more, so she hooked his palm with her little finger. Li Yundong was an otaku, so he didn't know the key trick. He just felt his palm itch and thought that the sexy beautiful woman had accidentally touched it, so he didn't take it seriously at all. Chao Kefi was very surprised to see that Li Yundong was indifferent. She had always been proud of her beauty and figure, and she knew how much desire and greed the men around her looked at her. Today she finally saw a boy she liked, but this boy didn't like her? No way. Chao Kefi was so surprised that she couldn't believe it. Is he gay? Originally, Chao Kefi only had a little tentative idea about Li Yundong, but now she became more and more interested. She felt like a hunter about to conquer her prey. After watching Li Yundong and Xiaojia leave, Chao Kefi smiled slightly. She pushed open the door of Yin Mingfan's office and said with a smile, I'm back again. Yin Mingfan raised her head and looked at her in confusion. Why are you back? Chao Kefi smiled and said, I suddenly remembered that we need to move some large luggage on the 9th floor, so I came up to ask you to assign some laborers. Yin Mingfan became more and more confused. No way. You are from a film and television entertainment company, and I am from a real estate company. You want me to assign some people? Isn't this too much? Chao Kefi smiled and said, oh, you are reluctant to ask you to pick up a few male laborers? It's not like I won't return them to you. Yin Mingfan sneered and said, come on, if you want to find laborers, all the men in this building will be willing to work for you. But you can't find any laborers. Don't do that. Tell me, which employee of our company do you like and want to poach from us? Chao Kefi snapped her fingers and said, Mr. Yin, you are wise and resourceful. You can be said to be the embodiment of beauty and intelligence. Yin Mingfen laughed and said, come on. Don't flatter me. Tell me who is it? Chao Kefi smiled and said, it's the new colleague who just went out. The smile on Yin Mingfan's face suddenly froze. Li Yundong? No way. Chao Kefi looked at Yin Mingfan's face with a puzzled expression. Why are you so excited? Could it be? Yin Mingfan glared at Chao Kefi angrily and said, what nonsense are you thinking about? He was introduced by a friend of mine. Don't mess around. Chao Kefi looked at her aggrievedly and said, did I say that I was going to mess around? I'm just borrowing your people. It's not like I'm going to eat them like Tripiaka. Yin Ming Fan opened her mouth and subconsciously wanted to refuse, but she suddenly thought, is she interested in this boy? If this boy was so easily seduced, wouldn't she be able to see the true colors of this boy? Thinking of this, Yin Ming Fan made a sharp turn and said, well, I'll call Xiao Jia and tell her later. Chow Kefi covered her mouth and giggled. Aren't you afraid that I'll eat him now? Yin Ming Fan smiled and said, be careful. Don't make trouble for yourself. By the way, are you better? Those people who want to collect debts have been bothering you badly, haven't they? Chow Kefi stood up and said with an enchanting smile, I'm much better. I've stopped taking medicine. But it's very miserable to collect debts, so I have to find some fun for myself. All right, I'm going to bring him over. After that, she made a flying kiss to Yin Ming Fan and left with a smile. Not long after Chow Kefi left, she saw Shen Hui push open the door like a gust of wind. She rushed to Yin Ming Fan like a gust of wind and shouted, why is that guy here? Yin Ming Fan was frightened by the indignation on her face. She leaned back and said, what are you talking about? What guy? Shen Hui bared her fangs and brandished her claws. That shameless lecher. I just remembered that the sex fiend I saw in your office was the same one I met in the Chanel store the last time. ***, why is he here? Is he an employee of the company? Yin Ming Fan was confused. She scratched her head and said, hey, eldest miss, calm down. Why are you so agitated? Shen Hui's face was flushed and her fingers were like hooks. She gritted her teeth and told her how Li Yundong had molested her at the beginning. Then she said loudly, cousin, fire him quickly. This kind of lecher must not be allowed to stay here. Yin Ming Fan was shocked and thought to herself, no way. This guy doesn't look like that kind of person. Can it be that people really can't be judged by their appearance? Is it true that he's rotten on the inside? Did Zhou Qin also make a mistake? Seeing that Yin Ming Fan was still thinking, Shen Hui said anxiously, hey, what are you still thinking about? If you keep this kind of person in the company, all the employees will run away because of him. By the way, where is this guy? If you don't fire him, I'll scold him and drive him away. Last time he ran away quickly. Yin Ming Fan stood up. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly heard a noise and footsteps coming from outside the door. Yin Ming Fan walked to the door in confusion. When she opened the door, she saw that the employees in the office were all running in the direction of the elevator. Yin Ming Fan stopped an employee and said, what's going on? The employee said excitedly, something happened on the 9th floor. Something big happened. Yin Ming Fan let go of the gloating employee and muttered, isn't the 9th floor Chow Kefi's company? Oh no, could it be that something has happened to her and Li Yundong? It can't be that fast, can it? Yin Ming Fan didn't dare to neglect it. She immediately pulled Shen Hui and said, let's go and have a look. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 114. Go to Watch Network. In the face of the sharp knife stabbing toward his chest, Li Yundong did not dodge. He stretched out 2 fingers and firmly caught the sharp knife between his fingers. Wang Yong felt as if Li Yundong's fingers were a pair of iron pincers, firmly clamping down on his knife. He tried to stab it in but it didn't budge. He tried to pull it out but it still didn't budge. Wang Yong was inexplicably shocked. He looked up and saw Li Yundong smiling coldly at him. Wang Yong was flustered and exasperated. He stretched out both hands and tried to pull the knife out, but it still didn't budge. It was as if the person standing in front of him was not a young and immature boy, but an indomitable bronze Luohan. The surrounding white-collar workers were dumbfounded by the scene. Some of them covered their mouths while others were tongue-tied. They couldn't believe their eyes. Wang Yong used all his strength, but he still couldn't pull the knife out from between Li Yundong's fingers. He was panting, and when he looked at Li Yundong again, his eyes were filled with fear and shock. Li Yundong snorted coldly. He exerted force with his fingers and shouted, let go. Wang Yong felt a huge force coming at him. His whole body trembled and he felt a sharp pain in the web between his thumb and index finger. He fell to the ground on his butt. The knife in his hand had already been snatched away by Li Yundong. In the eyes of the crowd, Li Yundong was like a peerless master in a Wuxia novel. The strength of 2 fingers was actually greater than the strength of an adult man. Li Yundong grabbed the sharp knife from between his fingers and glanced at Wang Yong coldly. Without saying a word, he snapped the knife in half with both hands as if he were cracking a biscuit. Wang Yong looked at Li Yundong coldly. The sound of people sucking in a breath of cold air could be heard. Wang Yong stared at Li Yundong with his eyes wide open. This was a scene that could only be seen in movies and TV shows. He really didn't know if he was lucky or not. That's a stainless steel knife. Could it be that this knife is a fake? Wang Yong's eyes fell on the sharp knife in Li Yundong's hand. When Li Yundong saw Wang Yong staring at his saber, he thought that Wang Yong had not given up yet. Li Yundong snorted coldly and took a step forward. What other tricks do you have up your sleeve? Li Yundong's cold snort was like a muffled thunder, shaking the corridor and the staff in the large office, making their hearts beat faster and their chests tighten. They felt very uncomfortable. Watch net. 7 Wang Yong was so frightened by Li Yundong that he kept retreating. He staggered and fell to the ground. He suddenly shivered as if he had remembered something. He tore his clothes with both hands, revealing a row of detonators tied to his body. Wah! At this time, everyone was shocked and terrified. They scattered in all directions as if they had gone mad. The crowd that was originally only 5 meters away from Wang Yong was now at least 10 meters away. Yin Ming Fan, who had been barely able to remain calm, felt her mind explode. She subconsciously wanted to run back, but she found that her legs were weak and she couldn't move her body no matter how hard she tried. If you come any closer, I'll take you down with me. Wang Yong kept retreating as he screamed in horror. Li Yundong was shocked when he saw the row of detonators tied to Wang Yong's body, but he soon found timidity, fear and bravado in Wang Yong's eyes. He calmed down and revealed a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Pull the string. What are you hesitating for? The surrounding people suddenly widened their eyes. Is this guy crazy? However, Li Yundong seemed to be sure that Wang Yong did not dare to pull the string, so he walked toward Wang Yong step by step. Wang Yong retreated step by step under Li Yundong's pressure. He pulled the rope in his hand, looking frightened and nervous. He shouted fiercely, "Don't come any closer. If you come any closer, I'll really pull the string." Li Yundong laughed and said, "Pull it. How good it would be to die with so many people in your arms." The surrounding people began to curse, "You lunatic, you want to die but we don't." Wang Yong also said with a ferocious face, "Did you hear that? Don't make me angry or I'll die with you." Li Yundong laughed and said, "You idiot, you don't even know how to threaten people. Is there anyone who threatens people like you?" As he said this, he impatiently urged, hurry up and pull the string. Don't just talk without practice." Wang Yong was so angry that his back was leaning against the edge of the balcony of the building. He felt so wronged and sad that he almost cried. Is it easy for me to get revenge? Why did I run into this devil? How did he know that the detonators on my body were fake? Wang Yong had first threatened Li Yundong with a knife, but it had been taken away by him. Then he had shown the detonators on his body, but Li Yundong had seen through him. Now he had no choice but to use his last trick. Wang Yong climbed onto the balcony, riding the edge of the balcony, and shouted, "Don't come any closer. If you come any closer, I'll jump down." Li Yundong hadn't expected that this guy would be so thick-skinned. Others couldn't threaten him, so he actually used his own life to threaten him. Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. "Jump. Let me see what other tricks you have up your sleeves." Wang Yong's expression changed. He was so frightened that his tone changed. "Hey, I really know how to jump." Li Yundong sneered and said, "Try jumping. I promise I can pull you up even if you jump down." Wang Yong only felt bitterness in his mouth. He had no choice but to turn his head and ask Chow Kefi for help. "President Chow, if you don't pay me back, I'll really jump down." His voice was desolate, completely different from his previous arrogance. Watch net. 7 At this time, Chow Kefi frowned and covered her chest with her hands, as if she was enduring some great pain. She couldn't speak for a while. When Wang Yong saw that she didn't speak, his heart became completely cold. Although his legs were straddling the edge of the balcony, this was a 9-story building. The strong wind blew, causing the corners of his clothes to flutter. Wang Yong subconsciously looked down and saw that it was as terrifying as hell. His body quivered and his legs trembled. At this time, Wang Yong suddenly found that in addition to Li Yundong, the other male employees in the office had also become bolder and were slowly and quietly approaching him. As soon as Wang Yong saw them approaching, he immediately pointed at them and shouted, "Step back, step back. If you take one more step, I'll jump down." In his excitement, his upper body shook and he suddenly lost his balance. He leaned to the side and fell down. The moment Wang Yong's body shook, Li Yundong suddenly felt that something bad was going to happen. He instantly opened his eyes wide and exerted force under his feet. At the same time that Wang Yong fell down, Li Yundong jumped to the edge of the balcony. Li Yundong only felt that his whole body was surging. It was as if he had infinite magical power and could do anything. He didn't care that this was a 9-story building. Suddenly, he stepped on the ground and his body jumped down from the balcony like a rock. Li Yundong's body was in the air, and he grabbed Wang Yong's arm with one hand and tightly clung to the balcony railing like an iron hook with the other hand. He suddenly exerted force with one hand and threw Wang Yong up. Then he exerted force with the other hand, straightened his body and flipped himself up. Everyone saw Wang Yong shake and fall down from the 9-story building. Almost at the same time, a black shadow flashed and fell down as well. It was too late to say, but it happened very quickly. Just as everyone's eyes widened and they were about to shout in surprise, they suddenly saw another black shadow fly up and fall to the floor of the balcony with a thud. Everyone fixed their eyes on the shadow and saw that it was Wang Yong, who was moaning and wailing on the floor. Then, another black shadow flipped over from outside the balcony like a rock, spreading its wings, and stood firmly on the ground. This black shadow stood with his head held high, calm and composed. His back was facing the sun outside the balcony, and his face and figure were like a silhouette. It was very three-dimensional, deeply engraved in everyone's mind with an indelible image. Yin Mingfan covered her mouth with her hand. Her beautiful face turned pale, and she stared dumbfoundedly at the silver but wax spearhead that she had asked 3 questions before. She suddenly understood why Zhou Qin had said that this boy was a real strong man. The other employees also stared at Li Yundong intently, and they were all extremely shocked. The same thought was beating in their hearts: who the hell is this guy? Li Yundong looked down at Wang Yong condescendingly, his face full of a playful smile, as if the flying to pull Wang Yong up was just a child's trick, not worth mentioning at all. He smiled and said, "What other tricks do you have? Show me again." At this time Wang Yong had just escaped from the gates of hell. He had already broken down and his crotch was already wet. He cried, "No, no, let me go. I won't come again. I won't dare to come again, okay?" The employees who had been afraid of Wang Yong before saw him like this, and they burst into laughter. Li Yundong smiled at the male employee closest to him and said, "I'll leave him to you." The male employee was flattered. He rushed to Wang Yong, kicked him and shouted, "Behave yourself. How dare you come here and behave atrociously?" Li Yundong saw that Wang Yong was just shrinking into a ball, without the slightest courage to resist. Only then did he walk out of the balcony and into the huge office. At this time no one knew who took the lead in applauding in the office, but soon the people in the corridor and the office were applauding and cheering as if they were welcoming a hero. Li Yundong was a little surprised. He smiled politely at the people around him and said, "Thank you." Li Yundong's humble attitude made the eyes of these white-collar workers, especially the white-collar women, shine more and more. It was as if the subjects of the country of women had seen Tang Seng, who had traveled far away. When Li Yundong came to Yin Mingfan, Chao Kefi and Xin Hui, he suddenly found that Chao Kefi's brows were frowning more and more, and her fingers were covering her chest more and more tightly. Chao Kefi bent over and gasped for breath. Her face was flushed and she tried desperately to breathe, but she couldn't. Only then did the employees around her notice Chao Kefi's abnormality. They all gathered around her nervously and said, "President Chao, what's wrong with you?" Yin Mingfan, who was more familiar with her, saw this and said loudly, "Get out of the way. President Chao has a heart attack." As she spoke, Yin Mingfan searched Chao Kefi's body, but she didn't find what she wanted. She immediately pointed to a tall white-collar beauty not far away and said, "Xiao Zhang, go to President Chao's office and get the medicine." As Chao Kefi's secretary, Xiao Zhang naturally knew where the medicine was. As if she had just woken up from a dream, she immediately pushed through the crowd and rushed to Chao Kefi's office. But after a while, Xiao Zhang ran over with a medicine bottle with a frightened face and said in a trembling voice, "President Yin, the medicine has been taken." Yin Mingfan's heart suddenly sank and her face turned pale. Chapter 116. Go to WatchNet. Chao Kefi didn't know what happened to her just now. She only remembered that she suddenly had a heart attack, and then she couldn't remember anything else. She was just in a daze when she felt a hot and vigorous aura pouring from the top of her head to the rest of her body. Go to WatchNet. 7KOM. Literature. Wherever this aura went, she felt as if a long drought had suddenly met with rain, and she regained her vitality. Especially when this aura went to her thighs, she felt an unprecedented pleasure attack her. It was like a raging wave hitting the shore, and it was simply surging out of control. Chow Kefi couldn't help but shout. When she opened her eyes, gasping for breath, she suddenly found that everyone around her was staring at her. Their gazes were strange, making her so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. Li Yundong hadn't expected Chow Kefi's reaction to be so intense. He coughed dryly and said, "President Chow, are you okay?" Chow Kefi's ears were red. Although she was several years older than Li Yundong at this time, she felt like a naked little girl in front of this boy. She was at a loss, embarrassed and speechless. Yin Ming Fan, who was standing to one side, quickly tried to smooth things over. "President Chow, you had a heart attack just now. It was Li Yundong who saved you." After all, Chow Kefi was an experienced woman. She took a deep breath and the redness on her face faded a lot. She forced herself to calm down, nodded to Li Yundong, and pretended to be calm as she thanked him. However, her voice was still trembling a little. "Thank you very much." Seeing that she was fine, Li Yundong secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He smiled politely and nodded. "It's nothing. It's nothing." It was really a piece of cake for him. Chow Kefi's cheeks turned red again. She subconsciously glanced at Li Yundong's hand, and her legs unconsciously tightened. Can a woman's hand do this? Where is he touching? No, he won't touch me in public, will he? Chow Kefi's mind was in a mess, but she didn't realize that before she fainted, there was a terrible violent debt collection incident. Yin Mingfan saw that Chow Kefi was in a mess and her eyes were blurred. No one knew what she was thinking, so she clapped her hands and said loudly, Okay, it's all right. Everyone can disperse. Xiao Zhang, take the murderer to the security department downstairs. Xiao Li, quickly organize everyone back to their posts. At this time the crowd suddenly dispersed. The men looked back at the gorgeous Chow Kefi greedily, while the women looked back at Li Yundong from time to time, secretly whispering to their companions, guessing Li Yundong's identity and origin. Watch net. (7 KOM) Literature. Although Shin Hui, who had been hiding in the stairwell just now, was shocked that Li Yundong had saved a dying heart patient in the blink of an eye, she was more and more certain that this boy was an unprecedented big pervert from ancient times to the present. He did this to a woman in public. If it's not pervert, then what is it? What's even more hateful is that this guy actually scolded me. Shin Hui gritted her teeth and thought, I must expose his true colors. As she said this, she glared at Li Yundong with hatred, turned her head and rushed down the stairs. Yin Mingfan held one of Chow Kefi's hands and asked in a low voice, How are you? Do you feel uncomfortable? The corners of Chow Kefi's eyes were full of ripples, as if the lingering charm of lust had not passed. She took a step and her legs were a little shaky. She gritted her teeth and felt more and more uncomfortable in her heart. She shook her head and said in a low voice, I can't walk. Although Yin Mingfan was a strong woman, her body was that of a weak woman. How could she support Chow Kefi, a beautiful woman with a plump figure? After only a few steps, Yin Mingfan was sweating profusely. She turned her head and said helplessly to Li Yundong, Why are you standing there? Can't you help? Li Yundong looked around at the people who kept staring at them, and then at the stunningly beautiful Chow Kefi. He didn't want to have any scandals with the beautiful women here on the first day. He wouldn't be able to face the little girl when he went back. Li Yundong said with an embarrassed expression, This is not very good, is it? Yin Mingfan was so angry that she blurted out, You did this to her just now, and now you're saying this? As soon as she said this, the office, which had been noisy, suddenly quieted down. The eyes, which had been evasive, looked over in unison, full of surprise and shock. Li Yundong looked aggrieved. I was saving her just now. Yin Mingfan was ashamed and angry at the same time. She glared at Li Yundong and said, Even now? Come and help. Chow Kefi had made up her mind to be an ostrich. She lowered her head and didn't say a word. No one could see her expression clearly. Only Li Yundong, who had gone over to support her, could see that her round and jade-like earlobes were so red that they seemed to be dripping blood. As soon as Li Yundong's hand touched Chow Kefi's arm, her whole body trembled. Her feet involuntarily went soft, and her whole body leaned against Li Yundong. Go to see. 7 KOM. Yin Mingfan, who was standing to one side, was speechless. Chow Kefi, are you waiting for him to help you so that you can throw yourself into his arms? You can't be so useless, can you? She didn't know that Chow Kefi was now extremely sensitive, and Li Yundong had a pure young body. As soon as the yin and yang came into contact, Li Yundong's strong masculine aura made her react violently. What's more, Chow Kefi was still savoring the pleasure just now. She was shy, angry, and embarrassed. She didn't know how to face this boy and her employees in the future. After Li Yundong helped Chow Kefi, who was so soft that she seemed to have no bones, to sit down in the office, he breathed a sigh of relief and said to Yin Mengfan, "Mr. Yin, it should be all right here, right? Can I go now?" Yin Mengfan looked at Li Yundong strangely and thought to herself, where did Zhou Qin find such a freak? Why is he acting so strangely? What did he do to save Chow Kefi just now? How could he make her like this by pressing on her head? Yin Mengfan thought of Chow Kefi's appearance just now, and suddenly felt an itch in her heart, as if there was a fire burning under her lower abdomen. "Mr. Yin?" Li Yundong saw that Yin Mengfan was staring at him in a daze, so he couldn't help but ask again. Yin Mengfan seemed to wake up from a dream. What's wrong?" "Oh well, you can go. But the police may come over later to take a statement. You just need to answer truthfully." Li Yundong nodded in response and turned to leave. After Li Yundong left, Chow Kefi, who was shrinking in her seat, let out a long sigh of relief. She was like an ostrich that had drilled its head out of a pile of sand, but she suddenly felt that something was missing around her. When Li Yundong had been there, Chow Kefi had felt unbearably shy, but now that Li Yundong had left, she felt a sense of loss in her heart and couldn't help but look a little confused. Yin Mengfan, who was standing to one side, saw it clearly. She couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Do you want me to call him back?" Chow Kefi glared at her angrily and said, "Even you are laughing at me?" Yin Mengfan covered her mouth and laughed. "He is your savior. It's only right to call him back and thank him." Although Chow Kefi was a romantic by nature, it was two different things to do in private and in public. She covered her face with her hands and said sadly, "I would rather die now. How can I live like this in the future?" Yin Mengfan sat next to Chow Kefi, pressed her shoulders with both hands and said with a smile, "Come on, it's better to live than to die. After a while, no one will remember this." "I hope so," Chow Kefi said, deceiving herself. She was silent for a while, then suddenly raised her head, bit her lip and said shyly, "Yin Meng, I want to ask you a question." Yin Mengfan vaguely guessed what the question was. She held back her laughter and said, "Go ahead." Although Chow Kefi was already a mature woman, she still felt ashamed to ask her friend about such a thing. She hesitated for a long time before she asked hesitantly, How did he save me? Why did I have such a reaction? Wouldn't he?" After asking this question, Chow Kefi stared at Yin Mengfan with her eyes wide open, waiting nervously for the answer. Yin Mengfan couldn't help but burst into laughter. Yin Mengfan looked puzzled. "Really? Isn't this incredible?" She couldn't help but think of what Zhou Qin had said on the phone before. "This is a real strong man. You have to use good steel on the blade." A real strong man? Could this guy be a legendary martial arts master who has been extinct for a long time? Yin Mengfan murmured as she thought about it. When Chow Kefi heard this, she couldn't help laughing and said, "How is he a master?" "He is a master, a master, a master." Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 117. Go to the internet. Master? Haha, in the past I would have thought that you were dreaming, but now. Yin Mengfan shook her head with a smile. "I really don't know. Maybe there are some people in this world that we can't imagine and measure. Go to the internet. You know what? Before, I asked him if he knew anything about accounting, finance and marketing. As a result, he didn't know anything about it. I thought he was a waste who was here to mess around." Yin Mengfan said and laughed. Chow Kefi's eyes widened. "No way. How can there be such a heroic waste? Are you blind?" Yes, Yin Mengfan, have been in the business world since I was 18 years old. I've been more than 10 years now. I usually boast that I have a pair of sharp eyes and never misjudge people. I didn't expect that today an 80-year-old woman would be in front of her child. I was wrong." Yin Mengfan smiled bitterly and sighed leisurely. "I thought that there would be a silver wax spearhead, but who knew that there would be a fierce dragon? Zhou Qin, you really know how to give me people. How can I use such a strong person?" Chow Kefi looked at Yin Mengfan in disbelief. "What? You don't know how to use such a strong person? You don't have to give him to me. I'll hire him at a high price." Yin Mingfan rolled her eyes at her. Don't even think about it. Such a strong person, it's good for me to keep him in the company as a guardian. There are many beautiful women in our company, and there are also many bad guys. Haha, let's see who dares to make trouble for our company in the future. Chow Kefi rolled her eyes and said with an apologetic smile, "Oh, President Yin, you know that I've been in a lot of trouble recently. Can you lend him to me for a few days?" Yin Mingfan and Chow Kefi had a good personal relationship. She glanced at Chow Kefi as if she was thinking about something. Suddenly she said to herself, "Oh, last time I seem to have said that our company's planning department had an advertising plan that seemed to have encountered some problems when it was released." Chow Kefi laughed and scolded, "Well, you're taking advantage of the situation, aren't you? Well, it's just an advertising plan. I'll help you with it. There's no problem now, right?" Yin Mingfan snapped her fingers and said, "President Chow, you're really on the right track. Well, I'll lend him to you for 2 days." But Chow Kefi saw that Yin Mingfan's tone had changed. She couldn't help but say, "Hey, that's too much. Don't push your luck." Yin Mingfan approached Chow Kefi with an ambiguous smile and asked in a low voice, "Hey, how did you feel just now?" Chow Kefi's face suddenly turned red. She rushed over angrily and pinched and hit her. "Bad girl, you are tired of living." Yin Mingfan laughed out loud. While resisting, she said, "You were so loud at that time. I was very curious." Chow Kefi laughed and scolded, "Little Lei Feng, if you're curious, go and ask him yourself. What's the point of asking me?" 2 beautiful and mature women were hiding in the office and fooling around. The people outside the office were also excitedly talking about what had just happened, because most of them would never be able to witness such a bizarre event in their lifetime. To watch the net. 7KOM. Color. Super_speed. Even more. No. After returning to the 19th floor, Li Yundong sat down in the seat that had just been assigned. The employees on the 19th floor who had witnessed Li Yundong's magical deeds, whispered to each other and secretly looked at him. Some people who hadn't seen what had happened couldn't help but come up and listen to them whisper the whole story. After the police finished their statements, Li Yundong found that many white-collar employees took various opportunities to pass by his table all morning. Their eyes seemed to be looking at an alien from an alien planet. Although qi refining could improve a person's self-restraint and calmness, being stared at by so many people all day long, even a genuine immortal couldn't stand it. In the afternoon, the incident began to escalate. When a beautiful, slim and confident white-collar woman passed by Li Yundong's seat, she quietly put a small note on his table. Li Yundong had been sitting in his seat with nothing to do with his eyes closed. When he found that there was movement in front of him, he opened his eyes and saw a beautiful woman passing by him. Before leaving, she gave him a flirtatious look and left a note on his table. Li Yundong picked up the note and glanced at it, only to see that it said, "Handsome, my name is Xiaoyu. This is my cell phone number. How about having dinner together tonight?" Then she drew a very artistic heart-shaped pattern below, with a series of phone numbers in the middle of the pattern. However, what made Li Yundong laugh and cry the most was that the beautiful woman's handwriting was really elegant, but she also wrote a series of Arabic numerals very artistically. Li Yundong looked at it for a long time, but he still couldn't figure out what the series of Arabic numerals were written. Li Yundong held the note and looked at it for a long time. His dazed expression made the beautiful women around him, who had been secretly looking at him, feel angry in their hearts. "Xiaoyu, that B***TCH is really shameless." Then these beauties also took action one after another. When they passed by Li Yundong's seat, they handed him small notes one by one. To watch the net. 7KOM. Literature. The male staff in the office were so jealous that their eyes turned red. They were not in the mood to work at all, and those who were relatively ordinary couldn't help but sigh faintly, feeling a little sorry for themselves. Once Yin Mingfan, who accidentally passed by the door of the big office, saw this scene and suddenly felt a headache coming on. Are these guys all infatuated? How can the company work like this? Yin Mingfan knocked on the door of the big office, coughed dryly and said, "Li Yundong, come with me." Li Yundong felt as if he had been granted amnesty and hurriedly followed Yin Mingfan into her office. Some of the beautiful women in the office who had not handed over the small notes resentfully crumpled the notes into a ball and threw them into the garbage basket. They, who had been wary of each other, looked at each other and couldn't help but share a common enemy. Shirnu is also in heat? Alas, these days, no matter how handsome a man is, he can't escape the fate of being kept by a rich woman. Save it, sisters. These days, the poor are independent, and the rich are the mistresses of the world. A beautiful woman said loudly in a strange tone. Suddenly there was a burst of laughter in the office. Although Yin Mingfan's office was soundproof, she could still hear the laughter. She shook her head secretly, rubbed her temples helplessly and said to Li Yundong, "Sit down." After a day of torment, Li Yundong was a little numb. He sat down, looked down, and adopted a non-violent and non-cooperative posture to deal with all kinds of strange gazes. Yin Mingfan saw that Li Yundong was sitting there like an old monk in meditation, as if he didn't notice that such a lively beauty like her was standing beside him. So much so that a woman like her, who had never been interested in men, couldn't help but feel a little angry. "Does this guy think I don't exist?" she thought. "Well, I'll see how long you can sit there." Yin Mingfan lost her temper. After asking Li Yundong to sit down, she didn't say a word to him, nor did she look at him again. Li Yundong was also happy to be quiet. He didn't have to worry about being looked at like an animal in the office, and he didn't have to worry about being suddenly disturbed, so he sat cross-legged alone, closed his eyes slightly and closed his eyes to practice qi. At this time, Li Yundong had completed the cultivation of the third level of spirit concentration. For him, practicing qi no longer had to be done at a fixed time and in a fixed place like before to have the best effect. During the Song Huizong period, the Huandan Reviving Life manual written by Xue Daoguang, who abandoned the monk and became a Taoist, said, "There is no need to look for the winter solstice to refine pills, there is a yang in the body." Li Yundong was in this state now. No matter when and where, the qi in his body was like a furnace that would never be extinguished. In the middle of the furnace, there was always a small pool of pure yang qi burning and jumping. As long as he fiddled with it a little, it would immediately become a prairie fire. Although Li Yundong had been practicing qi, he didn't know that when he was practicing qi, there would be a strange state of 3 flowers at one's prominence and 5 qis at the origin on top of his head. Therefore he didn't avoid Yin Mingfan when practicing qi and he enjoyed himself. After a while, there was a looming white qi rising from the top of Li Yundong's head. It was like an incense stick, condensing and not dissipating until it reached the roof and spread around. At first Yin Mingfan didn't notice it, but when she inadvertently glanced at Li Yundong, she was stunned. A thought came to her mind, "Damn, this guy can't be a living immortal, right? This is too exaggerated, isn't it?" Yin Mingfan stared at Li Yundong in a daze. It wasn't until the phone in front of her table rang that she came back to her senses. After taking a deep breath, she picked up the phone. When she heard it, it was none other than Zhou Qin. "Mingfan, it's me. Are you free now?" Zhou Qin said on the other end of the phone. Yin Mingfan looked at Li Yundong and replied in a low voice, "Yes, yes." Zhou Qin heard Yin Mingfan's strange voice and couldn't help asking, "What's wrong with you? Are you in a meeting?" Yin Mingfan said, "No." Zhou Qin asked in confusion, "Then why are you acting like a thief?" Yin Mingfan looked at Li Yundong, who was still in meditation, and said with a wry smile, "It's all because of this strong man you got me." Zhou Qin had called to ask about Li Yundong. When she heard this, she suddenly felt refreshed and said, "How is Li Yundong? Is he okay with you?" As Zhou Qin said this, she suddenly remembered that Li Yundong's temper was a little impulsive and irritable, so she said, "By the way, he has a bad temper. You have to be more careful." Yin Mingfan smiled bitterly and said, "He has a bad temper. He taught me a lesson on the first day. It would have been fine if he had just taught me a lesson, but he even taught Xinhui a lesson." Zhou Qin was stunned. "Xinhui? Your cousin? Xin Songhai's daughter? The eldest daughter of the Xin family?" Yin Mingfan smiled bitterly and said, "Yes, he scolded her and ran away crying." Zhou Qin giggled and said, "That's very in line with his style of doing things, but I heard that Xinhui is a beauty. He was willing to scold her." Yin Mingfan said in a low voice, "Isn't that right? It's like destroying a flower with a hot tongue. I say, who is this friend of yours? Why do I think he doesn't look like a mortal?" Zhou Qin heard her tone and her heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but ask, could something have happened to him? Yin Mingfan roughly told her what had happened that day, then glanced at Li Yundong and said, "Zhou Qin, where did you find such a strong man? Isn't it too exaggerated? He doesn't look like a human being at all. I don't know how to use him." Zhou Qin held her mobile phone and listened to Yin Mingfan talk about Li Yundong's deeds. She smiled slightly, and the smile at the corner of her mouth was full of satisfaction and joy. She was even happier than when others praised her 100 times. "Now you know that he is a strong man, right? I'm right, aren't I?" Yin Mingfan nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. He's too strong, too abnormal. As she said this, she covered her mouth with her hand and lowered her voice. He's sitting cross-legged in my office right now, practicing like a Taoist monk. There's also white gas coming out of his head. Damn, he's really like a living immortal. This is the first time I've seen such a person in my life. Zhou Qin was stunned, and the expression on her face changed. She suddenly remembered all kinds of incredible actions that Li Yundong had shown before, and a thought that even she herself could not believe flashed through her mind. Could Li Yundong really be an immortal? Are there really immortals in this world? Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 118. Go to watch net. Seeing that Zhou Qin had not spoken for a long time, Yin Mingfan whispered a few times. Only then did Zhou Qin react. Go to watch net? Yin Mingfan muttered to herself. Zhou Qin has never called me before because of a boy, let alone become distracted because of a boy. Is she really attracted to this boy? Hey Zhou Qin, let me tell you, your friend has become a popular young man in my company. Today there were more than 20 women in my company who gave him small notes and wanted to sleep with him. There were even more women on the other floors who heard about him and came up to see him. You have to keep an eye on him. Otherwise, he will become someone else's boyfriend in the blink of an eye. Yin Mingfan said tentatively in a low voice. Zhou Qin smiled bitterly. He is already someone else's boyfriend. Yin Mingfan shouted in surprise, no way. Her voice was a little louder and Li Yundong immediately woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, there seemed to be 2 rays of divine light shooting out of them, which made Yin Mingfan's eyes hurt. She subconsciously closed her eyes, rubbed them with her hands and whispered to the phone, he's awake. I'll tell you later. Yin Mingfan hung up the phone. When she looked at Li Yundong, she smiled unnaturally, as if the boy in front of her was the boss of this place and she was a little girl who had just left college. Damn it, why is it the other way around? Yin Mingfan secretly despised herself in her heart, but she wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say. Fortunately, she glanced at the time and found that it was already 5:30. Yin Mingfan felt as if she had been granted amnesty and immediately laughed. It's time to get off work. How do you feel today? After Li Yundong finished practicing qi, he only felt refreshed. The depressed feeling of being watched in the office had disappeared without a trace. He smiled slightly and said, not bad except that it was a little thrilling. Yin Mingfan felt that the boy in front of her was frighteningly strong, and she was at a loss. The smile on her face seemed to be covered with a layer of paste. It was dry and unnatural. Well, remember to come to work at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Li Yundong stood up and walked to the door. Then he turned around. What exactly am I supposed to do tomorrow? Yin Mingfan suddenly had a headache again. She unconsciously pressed her forehead and pondered for a while. Then she said, by the way, follow President Chow tomorrow. She needs to help you deal with something. Watch net. Li Yundong asked in confusion, isn't President Chow on the 9th floor? Isn't she the boss of a film company? Yin Mingfan explained, our company has some cooperation with her company, so it's normal to have some personnel arrangements. Li Yundong asked again, what can I do for President Chow? Yin Mingfan smiled and said, then you have to ask her. Li Yundong nodded and turned to leave. He walked to the elevator on the stairs and happened to see a group of white-collar women swiping their cards to get off work in groups. These white-collar women had been chattering and laughing, but when they saw Li Yundong they suddenly stopped talking. Some quietly smoothed their hair, revealing their most beautiful cheeks. Some secretly took out their makeup boxes to touch up their makeup and quickly touched up their makeup. There were also some who stuck out their chests and sucked in their bellies, looking like reserved ladies. Li Yundong laughed in his heart when he saw this. When he walked into the elevator, these women also swarmed in. Behind him, a man who wanted to come in shouted, hey, wait a minute. The beauty near the door pressed the button to close the door without hesitation, then shouted outside, wait for the next one. The man watched as the elevator door slowly closed. A man rushed over and put his hand into the crack of the elevator, stopping it by a hair's breadth. The elevator slowly opened again. The woman standing at the door stared at the man with her hands on her hips. I told you to wait for the next one. Didn't you see that this place is full? The man glanced into the elevator and said with an apologetic smile, there's still room for a few people, isn't there? The women in the elevator began to clamor, completely losing their previous reserved and ladylike demeanor. When you met a gangster, you retreated desperately. Now you're trying to squeeze forward. Are you still a man? Get out of here and wait for the next one. It was really scary to see so many women cursing in the street. The man was so scared that he took 2 steps back, and the woman at the door quickly pressed the button to close the door. As soon as the elevator door closed, the women in the elevator raised their hands and cheered, as if they had won a great victory. They cheered, looked at each other, and then looked at Li Yundong, who had a strange expression on his face, and laughed. Go to the internet. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. These women are really funny. Fortunately, after the women won the elevator battle, they did not further harass Li Yundong. After laughing, they returned to being reserved and ladylike. They were well aware of the truth: to treat the enemy as cold as winter, and to treat the handsome man as reserved as a lady. It was not easy to reach the first floor. The first thing Li Yundong did after escaping from the fragrant elevator was to take a deep breath. In the elevator, the smell of all kinds of perfumes made him suffocate. Walking out of the company building, the white-collar workers were whispering to each other and egging each other on. Go, what are you afraid of? So many sisters are giving you courage. Isn't it just asking him out for a meal? No, it's so embarrassing to be rejected. What does it matter? If you walk by the river often, your shoes will get wet. How many stinky men have you rejected in your daily life? Today you were rejected by a stinky man. It's the cycle of heaven and retribution. The women all giggled. While they were hesitating, they saw a dark red Lamborghini coming from the road in front of the company and squeaking to a stop in front of Li Yundong. As soon as these women saw this extremely flashy little sports car, their faces immediately showed jealousy and disappointment. They stopped talking and looked over in unison. After the little sports car stopped, the scissor door, which was as bright as a mirror, opened with a swish and a head popped out. She was wearing sunglasses that covered half of her face, and only her straight nose and red and sexy lips could be seen on her face. President Chow? Li Yundong was stunned for a moment. He had made up his mind about this woman. This woman is too flirtatious. It seems that she is seducing people all the time. This kind of person must be a lot of trouble, so it's better not to provoke her. It took Chow Kefi a whole day to adjust her mentality and mood so that she could face Li Yundong calmly. Her red lips formed a charming and moving arc, and she said with a smile, "Handsome boy, would you like to do me a favor?" Li Yundong pretended not to understand. He blinked and said, "What do you mean by favor?" Although Chow Kefi covered most of her face with sunglasses, the sexy lips that were exposed were even more seductive. The corners of her mouth were always able to draw all kinds of curves that could not only make a man's heart beat faster, but also accurately express her own emotions. Chow Kefi said angrily, "Of course, to get in the car." Li Yundong continued to play dumb. What for? Chow Kefi was a little depressed. She felt that the courage that she had summoned with great difficulty was slowly disappearing. Of course, to have dinner together? Li Yundong smiled and said, "I have to rush back to make dinner for my girlfriend." What? He has a girlfriend? And he still has to rush back to make dinner? The white-collar women who heard their conversation not far away felt dizzy. They not only regretted the tragic reality of Li Yundong being taken, but also sighed that there was such an extinct good man in this world. So strong, so handsome, and so family-oriented. God, give me a man like this. A woman clenched her fists like a love-struck fool and made a young girl's prayer. The women next to her made fun of her. Don't be a love-struck fool. I've never seen a man like this in my life, except for the one in front of me. Ah, it's a pity that the man is taken. What are you afraid of? As long as the hoe is wielded well, there's no man that can't be stolen. Let's see how Chow Kefi steals him. Well, I guess Li Yundong will get in the car soon. Can he not get in the car? Chow Kefi is known as the male Terminator. Looks, figure, wealth, tsk, our looks are incomparable. But if this kind of man is really stolen and someone else comes to steal him, what will you do? Those who steal people will also steal people. Yes, if they really steal him, would you still dare to keep him? The women looked at each other for a moment, and the atmosphere was cold. A woman came out to smooth things over. Hey, let's watch the show. Then the women turned their gazes to Li Yundong and Chow Kefi. Surprised, Chow Kefi pulled down her sunglasses and stared at Li Yundong with wide eyes. You have a girlfriend? She asked. Li Yundong couldn't help but smile at the thought of Su Chan being all alone at home. His eyes were filled with happiness. Yeah. Chow Kefi couldn't help but ask, she must be very beautiful. Li Yundong was generous with his compliments. Yes, in my eyes she is the most beautiful girl in the world. Chow Kefi couldn't help but say sourly, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Li Yundong smiled. Chow Kefi, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. Alright. You asked me to help you move your things this morning, but I forgot. I'll help you move them tomorrow, okay? Chow Kefi was in a daze. She didn't hear the rest of Li Yundong's words clearly. Her mind was filled with one sentence. He rejected me? He rejected me? He actually rejected me? Chow Kefi sat in her seat and stared blankly at Li Yundong's receding figure. For a moment, her eyes were fixed on Li Yundong. The women nearby also sucked in a breath of cold air. They were all dumbfounded and cried out involuntarily, "It can't be, right? Chow Kefi was rejected? No way. Chow Kefi, known as the public enemy of all women and a killer of men, was rejected? That handsome guy is so cool and awesome, isn't he? A Lamborghini and a beautiful woman? How could he reject all of that? A beautiful woman and a beautiful car? That's too much. He can't be gay, can he? No way. Didn't he say he had a girlfriend?" Li Yundong had no idea that his actions today were even more shocking than his heroic rescue earlier in the day. In just a short while, the entire building had heard about it. Not all of the office workers were interested in Li Yundong's heroic deeds, but they were all very interested in the fact that Li Yundong had rejected Chow Kefi in public. Chow Kefi sat in the sports car as if she had been petrified. She bit her lip hard, and her heart was filled with unwillingness and anger. Can he be so arrogant after saving someone? It was not until Li Yundong's back disappeared from her sight that Chow Kefi came to her senses. She gritted her teeth and thought to herself, Li Yundong, I want to see if you are really determined or playing hard to get. She stepped on the accelerator, and the handsome and beautiful Lamborghini spewed out a burst of exhaust and roared away. Happy reading. OM/. Chapter 119. Go to watch net. Li Yundong walked along the street for a long distance, ready to take the bus home, but he suddenly heard the roar of a motor coming from behind him. Watch net. 7KOM. Rainbow caret asterisk literature underscore learning % super hashtag speed. Update. Li Yundong looked back and saw that Chow Kefi's Lamborghini had caught up with him again. He shook his head helplessly and was about to step forward to make things clear. Suddenly, the Lamborghini made a beautiful drift in front of him, and the scissor door opened. Chow Kefi took off her sunglasses and shouted in panic, "Come on, someone is chasing me. Help." Li Yundong was stunned and couldn't help turning his head to look back. He saw that the road behind him was so empty that he could sleep on the floor. He asked in confusion, "Where is the person chasing us?" Chow Kefi bit her lip and said anxiously, "Do you want to watch him die?" Well, this was a really big accusation. Li Yundong had no choice but to sigh and get in. When he lowered his head and went in, Chow Kefi's eyes showed a trace of complacency and slyness. She secretly made a victory gesture and said in her heart, "Chow Kefi versus Li Yundong, the first round in." In order not to be discovered by Li Yundong, Chow Kefi quickly put on her sunglasses and closed the car door. She stepped on the accelerator and roared away before Li Yundong could sit still. The people on the side of the road saw this scene. The women looked at the sports car with envy, wishing that they were Chow Kefi. The men looked at Li Yundong, who got on the sports car with envy, wishing that they were Li Yundong. Because Chow Kefi was driving very fast, Li Yundong was swaying in his seat. He looked at the cars that were overtaken one by one and couldn't help shouting, "Hey, are you playing with the initial D? It's rush hour right now. If you want to race, go to another time." Behind the sunglasses, Chow Kefi glanced at Li Yundong, who was in a sorry state. She couldn't help laughing and saying, "I thought you would always be so calm." Li Yundong sat up gloomily and sighed. "Mr. Chow, you're the president of a film company. You don't have to fight with a student like me, do you?" Surprised, Chow Kefi turned to look at him. "You're still a student?" Li Yundong's mind had already flown home. He said casually, "Yes." Chow Kefi asked, "Where are you from?" "Tiannan University," Li Yundong said. Chow Kefi laughed. "Ah, I forgot that you and Zhou Qin are in the same school." Li Yundong asked curiously, "You also know Zhou Qin?" "Of course. Since ancient times, officials and businessmen have always been one family. If businessmen don't know which officials are in charge of their heads, then we should hurry back home and sell sweet potatoes." Chow Kefi said leisurely as if hinting at something, "In China, you can't survive without a background. Watch net. Net. Super underscore speed. More. No. After that, Chow Kefi secretly observed Li Yundong's expression. Li Yundong's face did not change, as if there were no ripples. What the hell? How can he be so shrewd at such a young age? Chow Kefi muttered to herself. But she didn't know that Li Yundong was actually a person who had no shrewdness at all. He had only been with her for a long time, and gradually been infected by her innocence and brilliance. That was why he still maintained a pure and innocent heart. The wall was 1,000 feet high, and it was hard to have no desires. If a person had no desires, he would appear to be arrogant, causing others to be unable to see through him or guess him, causing them to feel reverence in their hearts. I don't believe that you don't have anything to ask of me, Chow Kefi thought like a child in a fit of pique. She was looking at Li Yundong when he suddenly pointed to the front and shouted, "Watch out!" Chow Kefi was startled. She looked forward and saw an Audi driving towards her. Chow Kefi jerked the steering wheel, and the small sports car narrowly missed the Audi with a screech. Fortunately, Li Yundong had grabbed the handrail of the door at the beginning, otherwise he would have fallen and rolled around again. After the two cars passed by each other, Li Yundong looked at Chow Kefi in shock. "Miss Chow, please watch the road, okay?" Chow Kefi's cheeks turned red, and she finally slowed down the car. She obediently began to move slowly along with the traffic. Li Yundong unfastened his seat belt with lingering fear. He grabbed the handrail with his hand, and his eyes were wide open, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Chow Kefi looked at him and laughed. "Are you that nervous? I'll drive slower." Li Yundong looked helpless. "How can I not be nervous? If I die in a car accident, it will be too tragic." Li Yundong now had one foot in the door of cultivation. Once he completed the Zhuji phase, his future achievements would be limitless. But if he died in a car accident, there was absolutely no one in the world more wrong than him. "I'm very good at driving," Chow Kefi said angrily. Li Yundong laughed. "Well, Comrade Schumacher, can I trouble you to take me home? I don't seem to see anyone chasing you along the way." Chow Kefi slammed her foot on the brake and stopped the car by the side of the road. She looked at Li Yundong with a sorrowful look on her face. "Li Yundong, you saved me once. Can't you let me thank you for that?" Chow Kefi said. "Li Yundong, you saved me once." Li Yundong frowned, and his expression was awkward and conflicted. "But my girlfriend is still waiting for me at home." Chow Kefi begged, "Can't we just have a meal together?" Li Yundong hesitated for a moment. He searched his body and found that he hadn't brought his cell phone with him. He said to Chow Kefi, "Can you lend me your cell phone?" Chow Kefi handed over her iPhone. Li Yundong dialed Su Chan's number. After waiting for a while, a sweet voice came out. "Yundong, when are you coming back?" Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. "How did you know it was me?" Su Chan giggled. "There are only two people who know my phone number. One is Zhou Qin and the other is you. Go to CNET. Rainbow carrot asterisk literature underscore school percent super hashtag fast. Update. Li Yundong smiled. Well, you're smart. Are you good at home?" Su Chan said coquettishly, "Good, I'm very good. When are you coming back?" Li Yundong looked up at Chow Kefi and said, "I'm going to have a meal with the boss of the company. I'll be back in a while, okay?" Su Chan's voice was filled with indescribable disappointment, but she still said obediently, "Oh, okay. Come back soon. I'll wait for you." Li Yundong smiled and said goodbye to Su Chan, then handed the phone back to Chow Kefi. Chow Kefi suddenly felt sour in her heart. She was fighting with a little girl for a man? What was going on? But on second thought, Chow Kefi gritted her teeth, put the phone away and started the car. In her mind she thought, no matter what, Chow Kefi versus Li Yundong round 2 in. Chow Kefi drove to the west of the city. Li Yundong found that the left and right sides were mostly bars, saunas and luxury hotels. He couldn't help but be stunned. He asked, "Where is this?" Chow Kefi got out of the car, took off her sunglasses and said with a sly smile, "Suanlu, you've never been here before?" Li Yundong's expression suddenly became very strange. He said, "Is this the legendary red light district of Tianan City?" Chow Kefi laughed. "Look at you. You're so nervous. Don't worry, there's a very good restaurant here. I'll take you there." Li Yundong was surprised. "There's a restaurant here?" Chow Kefi smiled. "You'll know when you go in." Li Yundong laughed. "It's not a Western restaurant, is it?" Chow Kefi looked at him in surprise. "How did you know?" Li Yundong shrugged. "You high-class beauties like to go to Western restaurants, and so does Zhou Qin. but I don't know how high-class a Western restaurant is. Chow Kefi rolled her eyes and said with a smile, well, let's not go to a Western restaurant. I know a good Sichuan restaurant here. Let's go eat together. You can take spicy food, right? Li Yundong made up his mind. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. He smiled. How do you write the word spicy? Chow Kefi giggled. Well, let's eat to our heart's content today. Chow Kefi led Li Yundong from the parking lot to a Sichuan restaurant called Sichuan Cuisine. She ordered a relatively quiet table by the window. She rested her chin on her hands and carefully looked at Li Yundong, who was looking at the menu. It was around 6 o'clock in the evening. The sky was still bright, and there was a red sunset hanging in the distance. The red light of the sunset just happened to shine on Li Yundong's cheeks, making him look like a young man with an indescribable aura. Although he had revealed a calm temperament from time to time along the way, Chow Kefi could still sense the shy and inexperienced side of the boy from his young face. It was like a piece of unpolished jade that had just revealed its inner precious corner. On the outside, it was a hard and rough stone. It needed a patient and gentle craftsman to carefully polish and carve it, and finally, this piece of unpolished jade could be carved into a wonderful work of art. However, who would be the craftsman who would polish and sculpt it? Who would be the owner of the final product? Chow Kefi looked at Li Yundong obsessively. The boy in front of her did not have the filthy desire and depravity of this turbid world. He was full of positive masculinity and full of vitality. As long as she got close to him, she felt comfortable all over, as if she was soaking in a hot spring. In particular, Chow Kefi thought of the turbulent pleasure that Li Yundong had made her feel on the verge of death. This mature woman couldn't help but feel her lower abdomen heat up, and her lower body was wet and itchy. She couldn't wait to have sex with this mysterious and magical boy. I just don't know how this boy will perform in bed. Chow Kefi couldn't help but look at Li Yundong with charming eyes. After Li Yundong ordered the dishes, he raised his head and found that Chow Kefi was looking at him eagerly. He couldn't help but smile and say, "What are you looking at?" Chow Kefi and Li Yundong had been together for a long time, and gradually she was no longer as restrained and embarrassed as before. She looked at Li Yundong curiously and boldly and asked, "Can you tell me how you saved me?" Li Yundong laughed and said, "If you want to ask me, I really don't know." Seeing that Li Yundong was unwilling to say, Chow Kefi thought that he had some difficulties, so she didn't ask further. In her heart, she had already regarded Li Yundong as a hidden master. She laughed and said, "It doesn't matter if you don't tell me, but you have to compensate me." Li Yundong was stunned for a moment. "Compensate you?" Chow Kefi's cheeks were a little red. She said angrily, "It's all because of you that I lost face in front of everyone." Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "How can you blame me?" Chow Kefi's cheeks became redder and redder. She looked as if she had been drinking. Her cheeks were flushed and she was extremely beautiful, attracting the men around her to steal a few glances at her. This woman had a very classic oval face. Her facial features were actually very normal when taken apart, but when put together, there was an indescribable flavor to it. Especially when the corners of her eyes were slightly tilted up, she looked very flirtatious. When her eyes moved, her gaze would move and her eyes would flash. It was very seductive. Chow Kefi seemed to know this characteristic of herself, so she deliberately wore a pair of heavy black-rimmed glasses to suppress her innate seductive charm. Now that Chow Kefi had taken off her glasses, her eyes seemed to be electrifying. Her charm was amazing, especially her plump figure. She held her chin with her hands, and her full breasts were squeezed into a deep ravine. She was so attractive that it was enough to bury the ambition of any man in the world. Chow Kefi hadn't expected Li Yundong to answer her so shamelessly. Like a little girl, she said coquettishly, "Are you blaming me? What the hell did you do? I can't even be a man anymore." Li Yundong was extremely embarrassed. He coughed dryly and winked at her. "Hey, President Chow, watch your image." Chow Kefi looked around at the strange gazes around her, and her earlobes turned as red as cinnabar. However, she forced herself to be calm and said, "That's right. Who knows what you did to make me look like that? You made me look like that." For a moment, the gossip in the hearts of the surrounding gossipers was burning fiercely. All of them wished that their ears could stand up 8 feet high and become sensitive to the wind. They all looked at Li Yundong like wolves and tigers, full of hatred and jealousy. What the hell is going on? Li Yundong was a little crazy. He looked at Chow Kefi with a broken expression and thought to himself, Why are all the beauties in the world so stupid? At first Suchan spoke like this and then Feng Na also spoke like this. Why does President Chao, who looks so mature, also speak like this? Chao Kefi's face was as red as a rosy cloud, echoing the sunset outside the window. She was really beautiful. A smile flashed in her eyes, but her face was still sad and gloomy. She tapped the plate in front of Li Yundong with her chopsticks and said, "Hey, say something. Don't think that you won't be responsible if you don't speak. You have to be responsible for doing such a thing. You have to be responsible for doing such a thing." The gazes of the people around them became more and more strange. When they looked at Li Yundong, it was as if they were looking at Qin Shimi, a heartbreaker. Some of them muttered in their hearts, "What on earth did you do? Just say it. You want to kill me?" Li Yundong's calmness and composure completely collapsed at this moment, and his psychological defense was completely broken. He raised his hands and smiled bitterly. "President Chao, I was wrong. If you have anything to say, just say it. Don't talk like this. I can't take it." Chao Kefi rolled her eyes and giggled proudly. In her heart, she made a victory gesture. Chao Kefi versus Li Yundong in 3:0. A mature woman defeated a young boy. Happy reading. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.